We are live.
Hello!
Hello, you're back in your void.
Welcome to Roll for Combat Live.
That's right. And today, our special episode where we are going to go through the history of the OGL, because 1 year ago today is when, well, TTRPGs changed forever. I was thinking about it at 3:39 p.m. today. So that's when we first got the news about the new OGL 1.1, and I was thinking, this is it.
That's when we got the first of three different sources that leaked the exact quotes.
That's right.
You'll see when we go through it day by day.
We're going to go through it. So what is the purpose of this stream? Because it's a little different than our normal show. 1 year ago today is when we first got news and leaked the initial main aspects of the OGL 1.1. I'm actually going to show you that video, and then we're going to go through the timeline of everything, not everything, of most key points that happened up until the final, where they actually on January 27th made it part of Creative Commons. And they released OGL 1.0A and Creative Commons in the SRD. But before that, so that this is not lost to history, I wrote out a pretty long document of everything that I remember that occurred during this time. And good news is we were almost always on the air. So there's a lot of videos on this, so you can go back and see them. And if I get to it, I'll link them in the description. But we're going to show you some of the videos. We're going to talk about what was happening. I'll tell you some behind the scene things that were occurring. And of course, if you have questions, feel free to ask us questions, because it seems so long ago, and yet it was just yesterday. That was the longest month of our lives. I remember that. January
I felt like that month was an entire year because everything was changing throughout that month.
I know. It was so exhausting. I do see some people are asking questions, but I'd rather we talk about OGL specific questions, and then because I see people asking questions about other topics, and we can do that on our regular show, which is on Wednesdays. So for those you don't know, I'm Stephen Glicker, publisher of Roll for Combat. We got Mark Seifter, director of game design, and we have a weekly show every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern where we talk about a topic, usually some news. And 1 year ago today, what was the topic that we were going to talk about, Mark?
So here's what the topic was, and you'll see it when we go into the timeline. But December 21st, 2022, WoTC put up a post talking about this new OGL 1.1 that seemed to imply that a new one was going to come into existence that would work for D&D, one D&D, but not for be required for the other ones that came before. And so our topic was going to be, and you can even go to the video and look, because we describe it there, where we talk about how because of the new terms that they were suggesting for the new OGL 1.1, we thought Stephen was predicting that many people might just stay with 5e so they could keep using OGL 1.0A because the new terms were pretty harsh, basically. And so it was going to be about his predictions of how people would react and letting people know about this post that was on in December, just before the Christmas holidays, that was put up by WoTC. And boy, that video turned out to be something completely different. And we even changed the title card because that's when we received a leak that was confirmed by two additional sources that all of them trusted that this was the real deal.
Yeah, so that went from, hey, let's predict what the new OGL is going to be to, here's a new OGL. Oh boy.
Or here's pieces of it at least. And boy, these pieces.
So, yeah, we're going to go through it. And, oh, by the way, someone said the apology tour. One fun thing, I think I came up with that term. I think I'm the first one that called it the apology tour in my videos. And since then, everyone has called it that. So
you're the first one I heard,
yeah.
but there may have been other people too. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people called it that because that's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
But
I think I came up with it. I think I'm the one who came up with the terminology tour.
there may have been multiple
90...
people who did. You didn't get it from someone else, though. You
I
definitely came up with it yourself,
it.
but other people may have come up with it too simultaneously. You sometimes get a convergent evolution like that.
I know. But the reason is I remember because I forgot. I saw it somewhere else, like on a TV show or something back, like I'm talking about like 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, you mean just the term apology tour in general? It is just a standard.
Yeah. But then
it's a standard term. It's in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
And then I used it, and then everyone.
But you using it for Kyle Brink, like I'm not aware of you hearing it anywhere else first, but other people may have also used it on their own as well.
So let's start at the beginning. So, and we're going to go split screen in a little while, but we're going to start with our lovely faces right here. And of course, if you have questions, you can super chat and just try to keep it on topic, and we'll try to answer them. So way back when, seems like a million years ago, in Gen Con 2022, I was there, Mark was not, and I was speaking to other developers, and they were really worried about WoTC trying to revoke the OGL, as there were rumors spreading in the community that it was going to happen. And these people came to me, and I won't say who it was, but I was like, what? There's no way. I'm like, first of all, I knew the OGL pretty well. I knew the law. I obviously know a lot of lawyers. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies for a long time. And I was just like, this is not going to happen. There's just no way they're going to do it. But these people seem pretty serious. And they said, look, I'll tell you something, Steve. We got a plan if this happens. We got something we're going to do, and we're going to fight it. And I was like, okay. And it was on the back of my head, and it actually did make me a little worried. I was thinking that. I was like, can they really do that? Are they really that dumb that they would like try to muck around with it? Now, keep in mind, if they're making a new version of D&D, they can make a new OGL and do whatever you want.
That's what most people, even the ones who were worried about it, thought they were going to do, is make the new version that was mostly the same, and B, if you want to go to the new one, that now you have to use the new license. That's totally legit.
Yep.
Maybe it's very mean to do, and for the way the community works, it would upset a lot of people, but there's definitely nothing illegal about that. And when those rumors were whispering around, I think even then the rumors were more in the line of the new one is not going to have the license. Right. Not everyone was thinking they were going to try to get rid of the license for backwards as well, for even people who kept using 5e or before.
Yeah, I think it was a little fuzzy, my exact memory. I don't know if we were talking about OGL. You see, first of all, I didn't think there was any way they would affect the original OGL 1.0a, but they would come up with a new one. And they can do that, and then it would be, okay, do you move over or not? But that's a whole other topic.
I have notes from my conversation with you that you had with me after you talked to these people. And
oh my God, really?
It seems like at the time we thought that it wasn't going to affect like the old stuff, but was going to affect the new things coming on, which still was enough to give major alarm to other people who were at Gen Con, whose business model was based upon going along with it.
Well, plus they were all 5e. Like these were specifically people who did nothing but 5e. And, if they can't publish for 5e or the next version of D&D, they're out of business. So, to us, I was concerned, but I also knew we were doing Pathfinder. So I was like, all right, well, probably would stink if I lose half my business, but, at least we're still doing Pathfinder.
Or we would, Yeah, we would have been fine if it wasn't revoked, but was just like, well, we can't move forward. We could have also kept any fans who stayed with 5e,
right,
and were willing to do things that weren't compatible with one D&D potentially too. So it would be less than half, maybe, if we were lucky in this hypothetical version that we were thinking was going to happen.
So I'm going to go through the timeline of what happened, not necessarily when I learned of it, because some of this stuff is a little out of order, but from what I understand from people I spoke to is that the initial meeting with some of the top developers was on December 20th, 2022. So December 20th, 2022. That is, let's look at the calendar. December 20, 2022. That's a Tuesday. And obviously, right before the holidays, it's like, what a terrible time. And they were given the OGL 1.1, and there was 2 documents.
Is it a terrible time or is it a strategic time?
It's a strategic time, and I've seen this happen many times. I myself, I hate to say it because I'm lawful evil, have done it myself. In fact, I did something similar and served papers on Christmas, and the guy who I did it to called me up and said, "Merry Christmas," and he was with the sarcasm dripping off of his voice. But it's a terrible time to do it, but it's not unexpected. Anyhow, they were told to sign the contract before the public release of the OGL 1.1, which was supposed to be on January 4th. And as I was saying before, it was 2 documents. It was the FAQ document and then the OGL 1.1 contract itself. It was not a draft. I know people say
well,
everything's a draft in theory.
Technically, until it's signed, it is legally a draft.
That is
but
correct.
It was an executable draft that wouldn't be a draft once it was signed.
Correct.
So it was both a draft and not what we normally think of as a draft.
Correct. So the exact time of where they had to sign it, I think, is that I actually don't have exact confirmation. But it was the goal is that they were going to have people sign it, and then on January 4th they were going to come out and say, "Here's the new OGL, and here's the top developers." And I'm not going to say who it was, but we know every single one of them. We're all going to be on board, and that was like sort of how they were going to launch it.
That was their hope. Was to have them all be on board.
And then here now we'll go to the split screen so we can see everything.
So
side by side.
The next thing that happened, and this is before 21st. Our stream on. Wait, are you showing the stream on January 4th?
No, I'm sorry, the December 21st blog.
Yeah, awesome. Because on December 21st, this is when the day after they approached people in private, they gave a public post that, like, I don't think that anything that's in it doesn't seem to be like a direct factual lie. But it was definitely misleading to those of us who did not expect them to revoke 1.0, because there's a post on there. Steven's showing it to you right now. You can see, and they mentioned, hey, we're gonna have an OGL for 1DD. We're gonna release a 1.1 version of the OGL, and here's what it's gonna have. It's gonna have you report your revenue. You have to give us money past a certain amount of income.
Yep.
And it flat out stated some of these facts that were true about the 1.1, but it all seemed like this was saying this would apply to 1D&D, because of course 1.0 still exists, so you would choose which one you use, and they would probably only let you choose 1.1 for 1D&D, right? Yeah,
well, this is what they said. They're going to roll out OGL 1.1, and they were saying here that you had to give a certain amount of money after $750,000 in income. You're gonna have to do royalty sharing, and and then they had here things you had to accept a license, report OGL, include a creator product badge on your work, which by the way looked like crap because I don't know if I have a picture of it, but it looked terrible. And we were going to talk about this because it's like, oh, okay, they are coming out with the new OGL. They're coming out with 1.1. Fine. So then really our talk was going to be, should you move to 1.1 or just stick with 1.0A, which is what we still use now?
So what we did was on January 4th, we had a stream because that was the day supposedly that the people who received on 20th were supposed to have signed before, because that was going to be the public release. And so it was like this might be the public release. Maybe it will happen during the stream because we picked a time that was around when a lot of posts go up on their site because of Pacific time. And we streamed and we speculated. We used Steven's ability to speculate well about what businesses do to be like, that's how we started. We were like, what's going to happen? We thought people weren't going to shift from 5e because of these requirements of reporting everything and giving them all your money past a certain point. We thought they weren't going to want to use the 1.1. They'd rather stay with the 1.08. Because this 1.1 looked like it was not a good enough deal, like to make like one D&D would have to be a major killer app for anybody to actually be willing to sign on to these things that they were saying. And that's basically what the thesis of what we thought January 4th show was going to be.
Well,
until,
but we'll get to it in a second. One thing that happened that day, which I don't know if you remember, Mark, is that before the show, all these people were messaging me very nervously. And by the way, there was a weird feeling in the air. I can't describe it, but there was just like, people were just being quiet and weird in the industry of people I talked to. And I could tell it was just, everyone was uncomfortable. And then when I announced that stream, I got some texts from some people saying, they're supposed to go live today. And, and they were all like very nervous, and I was like, huh. And that's why I said, this could be a good stream. Let's like keep going until they release something. And then here it is. I'm gonna only play the beginning, but this is the part at 3:39 p.m. 1 year ago today.
Steven.
Yes.
I'm about to make our stream a whole lot
Did it come
cooler.
out?
So no, but. And I stress for everyone who is watching this, if you ever hear someone say they got something from an anonymous source, that you should like be very suspicious of it and not just take it for granted that it's accurate. But I got from an anonymous source while we were streaming some of the texts from OGL 1.1.
Really?
That is coming out. Yes. And you can you check it when it actually comes out, and you'll see if this is the exact same text, because I don't know for sure. It could be like that they changed to another version, but this is supposed to be the version that was rumored to come out today. And just as you predicted, Stephen, it says in there, this agreement is, along with the OGL non-commercial, an update to the previously available OGL 1.0A, which is no longer an authorized license agreement. Then it does have some other things from the GSL. It then says we can modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided we give 30 days notice.
Oh, I knew it.
We will provide notice of any such changes by posting the revisions on our website and by making public announcements through our social media channels. It also says you agree to give us a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use your content for any purpose. And apparently some other stuff, but like I don't have the whole thing. I just have an excerpt.
So someone you trust?
Yes, I trust this anonymous source. I trust this anonymous source. I trust who the person is.
I believe you. You and I know.
And while they didn't tell me how
you and
I
know enough people, I believe you.
While they didn't tell me how they got it, I know who they are in contact with, and I have a very strong suspicion.
I also believe 1.1 is out to certain people if they signed NDA, and it has been out for a couple weeks. I actually know. Okay, that's enough for that. But you get the point, and that was the actual time where it was leaked. I feel like we're in Inception. It's like we're watching a video of a video, and I see the chat. It's so weird because I'm also watching your own chat. Anyhow, that was it. And by the way, privately, Mark and I were messaging each other, and he was telling me that this was legit.
And Steven verified it with another person. I verified it with another person. Like Steven was saying, he was getting messages of anxiety at this time from people. I was too. Also, I want to be clear. Several content creators were warning about this, but vaguely. They didn't want to reveal the exact text because they were careful. They didn't have the aegis of Steven's lawyers that the certainty that it would be safe to reveal it. So you had like Griffin Saddlebag and Indestructible Boy, who were being very clear that something very dangerous was going to come, but they didn't they didn't give exact quotes from it. They were just like, "This is going to be bad, everybody. You need to listen."
Yeah. And after that, I went onto Ian World and I posted this, and it's funny because it started off very slow, and then we posted it like on Twitter and maybe even on Reddit. I don't remember. But then
in Ian World, we had like 1 or 2 people who were like, "Come on, guys, I really think this is real."
First, it started off slow, and then it started to pick up speed. And
we
then
had a bunch of people who were like, "This can't be true. This seems like so amateurish, and like it was not written by a lawyer, and like it's too snarky and cutesy to be like a real text that was in it." We were called terrorists by a moderator. For trying to stoke fear by making things up. It was a wild evening. Because remember, when you say picking up steam, you're absolutely right. But it's not like it took days to pick up steam. This was like in real time. It was picking up steam over that night.
And then Owen Casey Stevens and a few other people who know us.
Yeah, Owen came on there and it's like, "Look, I know Mark Seifter and he's not going to make this up.
Yeah.
I have worked with him. I know his integrity, and he at least thinks this is real."
Yeah. And also,
Owen was like, "I don't know if it is or not."
We have nothing to gain for this.
Mark has no reason to do this. There's no benefit to him. He's in the industry. Yes, sure, maybe it gets views on the YouTube channel, but this YouTube channel is not our main thing. That we like it and we enjoy it, but like getting more views on this YouTube channel by making something up, when like I have a reputation in the industry for, telling it straight and for being someone I hope that people trust. And Owen said that as well. And some people were like, "You should listen to Owen. He's been in the industry for a long time. He wouldn't just say this randomly. This is someone I know." Because some people who were not PF2 people didn't know me. They certainly didn't know our channel, which was small at the time. Some people were like, "The reason this has to be fake is why would a channel this small have gotten it?" And some people who backed us up were like, "Well, that's because there's a lot of industry contacts to these 2 people, even though it's a small channel. Understand?"
Right. At that time, we were much smaller. And I think there was probably like 30, 40, 50 people watching that stream at the time, at most. And, we had maybe 3,000 subscribers. And, very loyal Roll for Combat subscribers at the time who were buying our products and watching our streams. But boy, that sure changed awfully quickly, and it was really, really picking up steam, and it was really starting to get argued whether this is real or not. And again, that was the big part. People's like, "Why? Who are these guys? Why are they getting it? It's like ridiculous." But as I said, is that just because you have a small YouTube channel doesn't mean we don't know a million people, because we do. Between Mark and I, we knew a lot of people and have been, doing this indirectly or directly for a long time. So with that, I also spoke to my lawyer that night. That's actually the secret stuff no one knows about. So that night I called up Alan, and Alan, by the way, people laugh because in the video he says he's not an expert. By law, you can't say you're an expert at anything, even if you are an expert lawyer. Like, even if you've been practicing law for 50 years in contract law or finance law or, real estate law, you can't say you're an expert. But
that explains it.
Yeah, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to.
Okay.
But he has been doing contracts. He does other things, but specifically contracts for 35, 40 years, and he is, he's a genius. I mean, he went to Cornell and Columbia, and he's a very smart guy. Anyhow, he's like, "Oh yeah," and he was free, and he knows what I do for a living. I talk to him about it all the time. He's very much aware of this industry, and he is a bit geeky, and he also has a lot of friends who work for Hasbro. So he said, "Oh yeah, let me look at it." Especially when I showed him the OGL, because like, that's it. He's used to like 50, 100-page contracts, and I show him a 900-word document. He's like, "I can do this in my sleep." So, and then the next day, oh boy, that's when things, as we say, got real. That is when, on January 5th, Gizmodo and Linda Codega dropped the Dungeons and Dragons new license tightens its grip on competition. And sure enough, some of the quotes that we said live on air are verbatim as to what's in this article.
Even better, in terms of like both of them sort of verifying each other that they were at least the same source.
Mm-hmm.
There were times where Linda Codega's quote overlapped ours, but it ended before ours ended, and it began before ours began. So it had extra text,
right?
That also and then ours had extra text in the other direction, but they matched in the middle, and so they weren't just literally the same pieces,
right?
And so even at that point, everyone changed their tune. No one like apologized when they were saying that we made it up before, but people at least changed to saying, well, at least Gizmodo and Roll for Combat at worst have fallen for the same fake, maybe, or it's real. And some people started admitting maybe it's real that before said it couldn't be real.
Yeah.
And so that turned everything around because nobody knows we vetted it with 3 people, and we still never revealed our sources, so nobody knows how credible our sources are. But everyone knows that an actual journalistic, someone who must follow like full journalistic rules by like the rule of their position,
and their lawyers
must have and had lawyers who vetted it, must have done their homework. And so, like, honestly, I would have also trusted Linda Codega's work more than a stream with 2 people, including a coworker that I really, really trust. I would have still trusted. I would not have a coworker I really trusted on the stream. I would have not said that they made that up, but I would have been more sure about it that they weren't faked or something like that once the journalist got in there.
By the way, I forgot about this part, but the document was supposed to be released on January 4th.
It was.
And it was supposed to, companies and creators were given 7 business days to agree and comply, and they had to start using it on January 13th, 2023.
That's right. And just forget about it if you have like a Kickstarter that was
exactly
in the middle.
Right. So in theory...
Oh, here was another funny thing that happened that's not exactly on our thing because we didn't... when we're talking about what happened, we weren't feeling the need to verify ourselves more after this point since it was proven that it was real. But the Kickstarter, one of the head honchos at Kickstarter who was in charge of like RPGs and some of the other projects kind of tipped off that it was definitely real by virtue of saying, of pointing out, hey guys, so we at Kickstarter know that you guys will possibly go bankrupt having to pay this much money if you get more than 750. So 25%. We negotiated, which is 25% for everything over 750. So we negotiated for 20% on Kickstarter.
That's correct.
Which at the time it hadn't been verified this was even real, but once the top person at Kickstarter indicated, oh, it's definitely real, and we negotiated it down for you get a better cut on Kickstarter. At that point, everybody, even the people who were like maybe Linda Codega and Stephen and Mark and everybody else were all faked by the same scam person. They were like, okay, no, this has to be real. Kickstarter would not have been making a deal with WoTC for something that was made up by something that was a fake.
And also, if you go by that 7 days, that means if they had that meeting on the 20th, they probably would have given them like to the December 27th. Maybe if they were nice, they were giving them to like December 31st to say, okay, you got to sign it by then. And it's like, really? You want me to look at this between the 20th and the 27th, literally over Christmas, where, I mean, I myself let that I was invited to that meeting. I was in Spain. It's not like, oh, great, let me just spend my Spain vacation.
Oh, you were actually invited to it?
No, I was not invited.
Okay,
but if I was invited, God, if I was invited,
the people who weren't invited had even less time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, whatever. The point is that it's like, take it or leave it. And I spoke to a lot of people, and I said, well, what was it like in the meeting? And they said that basically was, here it is, take it or leave it. And I was like, oh boy. A few other fascinating things is that I'll give you the highlights. OGL 1.0A is no longer binding, is that it's gone.
Yeah, they said they were going to revoke it.
They're revoking it. They said you had to declare revenue. Anyone making over $50,000 a year in revenue now required to report their earnings to Wizard of the Coast. You need to register all new products, all your new products, anything you were going to publish had to be registered, regardless of how much revenue they generated or whether it was free or paid for. And that's when the Patreon people were losing it, because they're like, I got to register everything. And how many free things Patreon people and just people who publish on Drive Through RPG. So they were going crazy. They figured out how to piss off everyone. The royalties had to be paid. So over $750,000, you had to pay royalties of 20-25%. You had to listen. Non-commercial publishers had to sign. You had to sign it. You had to sign OGL 1.1, even if you were giving things for free. You had to sign OGL 1.1 and revoke and no longer publish under 1.0a. There was a termination with 30 days notice. Is that for any reason that WoTC can modify or terminate the OGL 1.1 agreement for any reason whatsoever, and all they had to do was give you 30 days notice.
That was perhaps the worst part of it, and we revealed it on the thing because it was perhaps the worst, because even if the reason it was the worst is because even if they were willing to compromise and they fixed any other piece of the license, they could always just revoke it at any time and then just say, well, now there's no license and you have to destroy all of your product.
Well, no, the best one is the next one. Wizards of the Coast retains all the rights of everything you create, whether it's commercial or not commercial. So they can terminate it and then keep it and then publish it themselves and keep all the profits. That is the worst one.
I mean, that absent of the ability to terminate it and some of the other things is like... That alone of them having rights is not that different than some other things that people sign, but certainly in combination, it's bad. But the ability, I think that flat out their ability to just revoke it from you at any time for no reason is actually the worst part, because
they both suck.
It means that no matter what is written there, it doesn't matter. Even if I mentioned it at the time, like they didn't even, if they wanted to be deviously nasty instead of just obviously nasty, they could have actually made the OGL 1.1 unicorns and rainbows. Yeah. They could have been like, you know what? If you make less than 50,000, we're going to pay you additional money to help you because we want more companies that are in there.
Right.
And we'll give you extra things. We'll give you we'll put you on D&D Beyond for free. And they could have put in tons of things that they never intended to do to get people to sign up for the 1.1, to get people to put their Kickstarter onto it and commit to it. And then a few months later, once they were sure everyone was locked in, they could then revoke it and make a 1.2 and be like, well, if you want to do it now that it was on 1.1, you have to use 1.2, and 1.2 is even worse than what's in 1.1 now, right? 1.2 is just like, you owe 25% even before 750K.
So there was also a 6-month grace period. So you had 6 months to move over to this. But not really. Like that. The point is, it was terrible. And also, if you look at this, it affected everyone. It's like, it's mind-boggling if you think about it. It's like, wow, they really managed to piss off the entire community. Whether you're a publisher, whether you're a player, it didn't matter. Everyone was upset. Everybody.
I think that showed greater solidarity than the executives at the top of Wizards predicted. And I think that many of the lower level staffers who actually work on the game would have known that if they had been listened to, because the executives didn't realize, because they don't play or care about the game as a game, how much solidarity, like, Jane Q Random, a D&D player, has for these hypothetical people who make a cool Kickstarter book and then lose money because WoTC suddenly yanks it once they sell past a certain point. They were probably thinking, well, everyone will think that if you made over 750, then they'll have no sympathy for you because that's a lot of money. But in reality, people did. Everybody, they knew, they thought, what if I become a third-party content creator? and I have to report it over 50. I would have to do that over that. There was more solidarity among people who were not in certain groups that were only certain groups were really being persecuted the most by the license. And I think they predicted that the majority of people will be like, well, this doesn't affect me, so I don't mind. They didn't recognize this is a game that teaches people to join up, to not leave a party member behind, and to work together against some big, dangerous thing that would otherwise be impossible to defeat on your own.
Well, I think what they were hoping to do is, they were going to go to the main people, and they were going to hopefully sign some of the big wigs. And then all the little publishers of like 1 to 2 people, what were they going to do? How sophisticated, of all the publishers and everyone who does this, how many people have lawyers? Probably 0.01%, if that, very few.
How many have really good lawyers that they can trust to go up against WoTC?
Exactly.
It's Stephen Glicker. It's only him. Maybe like 1 or 2 other companies, depending on which ones they're going after.
Well, that is when I decided, and boy, everyone had different reactions to this, but mine was just pure rage. And I was like, fine, if they're gonna do this, then I'm gonna fight. And I have the means and the people that maybe a lot of other people didn't at that point. And that's when, on that night, we brought on, same day, January 5th, we sat down with my attorney, Alan Bushlow, and we discussed this. We discussed the implications of 1.1. And boy, that video, still the most popular video on our channel. And the main takeaway was, well, the OGL is 900 words long. It's very small. It's been used successfully throughout the industry and WoTC themselves for 23 years without issue. And it is basically considered something that was part of the vernacular, the culture of D&D. So much so that even WoTC themselves, who created it, so they couldn't revoke it. They could say they revoked it. You could say anything, but that doesn't mean it's legal. Now, of course, you'd have to go fight it, and you'd have to go up against Hasbro and WoTC. And obviously, if it's one person, that's a lot. But it looked like everyone and their friend and their mother were coming out of the woodwork to fight this. And this was still one day. In one day, it went from not even 0 to 60, 0 to 1 billion. Like, I can't believe how fast people were furious about this.
This
Absolutely
spread quickly
furious.
Once the Gizmodo article was out.
Oh, it was insane. So, by the way, I have some back-end stuff. I mentioned this once before, but I'm going to tell you what some of the deals were. So, one of the deals is that originally they had a first round, and that was on December 20th. And supposedly, now here's the crazy part, I've never been able to find out, and I haven't really asked around because I secretly don't want to know. Supposedly 1 or 2 people did sign it, which is kind of unbelievable. But anyhow, supposedly 1 or 2 people did sign it.
Well, I mean, I'm not that surprised, because if you get a high pressure offer that's kind of pushing you and you get afraid and you don't have a lawyer, what are the chances that everyone says no and that somebody doesn't just panic sign it? Especially if you're talking about a WoTC that up until that point was pretty cooperative with creators up until that point. And if they were just like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, and they were being nice. Everything I've heard from people that are in there, which is more generic than what you've heard, Stephen, is that the people who were there seemed nice. And even the people that they were talking to didn't seem to understand the problems with the things that were being signed. So they may have had people giving them assurances who seemed nice, who were in the room, that helped to get some of the people to sign if they didn't pay attention to what the clauses of the contract said.
Yes and no. I heard they were very nervous in the meeting, and they were very, very scared that people were going to record this and get this information out. I did hear that. Some of the caveats for the people who were in that room, by the way, they were going to get a 15% royalty payment instead of 20 or 25%. And that they were given a promise vague promise that WoTC would allow them to use their media channels. They were going to get, by the way, the contract was for 2 years, and they were going to get 8 emails for every 2-year contract. But there was going to be blackout periods when there was like big products being released. You would get 6 articles about your product on D&D Beyond, 6 emails to all people who opted in to D&D Beyond emails, 8 social media posts on D&D Beyond or D&D brand channels, 2 YouTube videos on D&D Beyond or D&D brand channels, 6 days of D&D Beyond homepage placement, and they claimed at the time offhandedly, so this is not confirmed, that their D&D Beyond email list was approximately 5 million people. And then again, this was going to be a 2-year agreement. But this was vague. And if you think about it, especially in the state that social media is in right now, 2 years, a lot of things can happen in 2 years. You signed that agreement, and who knows where anything can be in 2 years. So that is one of the carrots they gave people in that initial meeting.
So imagine they had a person who seemed nice, who was just being like, look, we got you an even better deal than this if you sign now. It's not too bad for you. Right. I could see someone either being sweet talked into it or scared into it a bit, not wanting to have to deal with lawyers. And I think fortunately most people at the very least did not sign this.
Yes.
Right?
None of them did, because then this movement started, and they basically were asked them to have a second meeting, and before the meeting they said, well, before we have the meeting, can you tell us what, this is WoTC asking, so can you tell us what you would like changed? Because before they weren't even asking for feedback, they were just like, this is it, take it or leave it. Now they're like, okay, what do you want changed in this? And the response of the person I spoke to said everything. Like, what do you want released? What do you want changed? The whole thing. Oh, is that it? Yeah, just the whole thing. Oh, okay. There was no middle ground. They thought they might have like, well, we could change some of it. What don't you like? It's like all of it. Just
problem is, no matter what you change, if you keep in the part, they can just revoke it. Right. Then you don't have a license with them, really, or not something you can trust to build your business on.
Yep. So at that point too, let me switch back to the 2-camera view. We'll get back to the other in a second. At that point, I was coordinating with Mike Holt from Mage Hand Press, and he started the Open D&D movement. He and I were talking a lot because I know a lot of people, and he told me about the Open D&D movement. He showed me the website ahead of time, and he was working on it, and I was like, oh, this is great. And if you see the list, I think it's still up. And I said, you can add me to the list. And he put me at the top. And then I actually, even the one who said to him, I bet you we can get Owen, Casey Stevens on this. He's like, oh, that'd be great. Let's get Owen on there. Because they wanted to get some people with some, gravitas on there.
Yeah, we had been in contact with Owen already because he actually helped get us in contact with Ryan Dancy, who we were getting on the show. And you will see we got on the show a few days after that. Yeah.
So right around that time is when I was starting to talk to him. And he was going to release the Open D&D website approximately on January 6th, 7th, around that. He was still figuring it out. It wasn't totally done yet. And I was helping him work on it. And then I said, wait. Don't do it then. Let's coordinate. Because at that point, then I was like doing daily YouTubes, pretty much covering this nonstop. I said, how about this? I have the OGL 1.1. And I'm going to put it out because it wasn't public at that point. No one had it.
Yeah, we had given excerpts. Linda Codega had given excerpts. And nobody had the whole thing in public.
Right. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to do a live stream about the 1.1. And then I wanted to actually, during that, publicly announce Open D&D to the world during the stream. And then have him launch at that. And he was cool with that. So he and I worked it out. And during that stream, We talked about 1.1. We talked about the implications. We talked about, at that point it was really getting popular. And between myself and Mike and Mark and others, we launched the Open D&D movement to the world. It's his site, but that's where officially it was launched. The very first instance was on Roll for Combat. So you can see we're kind of in the mix of everything there.
We sure got involved with a lot, because that was also
did.
the day before we put all of the text of 1.1 out, right?
That's right. I had it, but I needed to get it verified, because I'm like, I cannot release this without secondary.
We had triple verification on the quotes, because we had some sources who weren't going to give everything, but who would at least say, yes, this quote is from the real one.
Yeah.
And so it took a while to get verification that the entire whole thing was the real entire whole thing from enough people.
Yeah, I also had to clean it up a little.
Yeah, to take off metadata and other things that might reveal stuff.
Yeah, there's some things I had to take out. So anyhow, and then on January 6th, January 6th,
on January 9th, the very next day that's when we put out the video where you get an OGL 1.1.
That was a good cover.
Yes.
And that's when I started my obsession with thumbnails, by the way.
Well, we were talking to some other YouTubers about thumbnails a bit, and there were a few people who were giving some advice, and then Steven got really good at that during those conversations and making these. And when I say good at it, I say it with love, but those are not the kind of thumbnails that I enjoy as a person.
He doesn't enjoy them, but I hate to break it to you.
They sure get clicked on a lot.
I come from the Mr. Beast school of thumbnails. I'll tell you that, because boy, they work. I'll tell you. That's all I got to say. They
sure get clicked on a lot.
Sure get the clicks. That's all I'm going to say. And then, ta-da! The OGL 1.1 was released to the world, and boy, that was interesting. So we put it out, and then that day I actually was watching every video. I was watching YouTube. I was like one of those people who have like 10 videos up at once, because I was watching in real time people getting the video and getting the OGL 1.1 and then reacting to it. And I was like, everyone, because it was like wildfire. It was going as fast as possible. It was really amazing. Actually, it was kind of neat. And this is it. By the way, I have some things highlighted in here just because these are some of the more important aspects at the time. And this was the combination of the FAQ and look at this language. The language is so crazy. It's like they even have, here's the part. It says the actual license is available through the hyperlinks below. And if you're comfortable with legalese, or somehow you actually enjoy reading legalese, feel free to jump ahead to those links. Oh my God. So people are like, there's no way they actually wrote that. Yeah, they did. They actually wrote that. It's actually shockingly, what do you call it, amateurish, but it's really weird.
It's really colloquial in a way that seems very strange.
Yeah, here we go. It's like, it's right here. It's something that's like, if there's any form of payment or income for access for your work is involved, or specific for a particular work, even if it's just $1, it's covered by the OGL commercial. They do a lot of things like trying to be funny and goofy. And I'm like, no, by the way, it's so funny and goofy. If you make more than $750,000, you owe us 25% of your qualifying revenue.
They were like, even our lawyers love playing D&D, and so we wanted to make it fun where you level up, and you level up to owing us money. That's what they did.
I know. They said you level up. The more money you make, the more money you owe us. And maybe just one day, if you're really lucky, you'll get to the top level. And then we work out a special deal just between you and me. It was ridiculous.
That was in there. I remember because some people thought that this one was made up, even though they were like, okay, their quotes may have been fine, but they made up some of this stuff. They thought that this stuff was a fake. Once again,
well, it was just
because some of it is just so almost snarky a little bit.
Some of it,
some of it
all
Yeah.
of it. Anyhow,
I don't think that much of it is literally snarky.
dude,
It's
I
like,
read a lot of
it's
these
unfair terms,
dude,
but
I've read.
I think they're trying to be cute, not snarky,
Yeah, but
they wind up sounding snarky and a little bit condescending in places.
Okay, I've done 1,000 of these contracts. In all my years, I have never, ever seen anything like this. They're not, they don't put stuff like that. They're cut and dry. They're as short as possible. In fact, you want them short because any of that extra, because the problem is that if you put something in there by accident, it can be legally binding and you might say something you don't mean to say. So they're trying to, anyhow, I won't get into that. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, it's terrible. Anyhow, next up, on January 10th, we discovered Canadian lawyer Bob Tarantino, who did his PhD thesis on the OGL. And he did his thesis in 2019. And then he did an interview on a YouTube law channel in 2021. And the funny thing is the YouTube video only had a few hundred views at the time. And then we did a video of us watching his video, and that quickly shot up to 4,000 views plus. I don't even know what it's at now, but it was fascinating, and I'm lucky I was able to find that thing, because who knew you can find someone who wrote his law thesis on the OGL, and just a couple hundred views, and it was a very good video. It was very great. Good interview.
More on Bob Tarantino in a few days of our little calendar.
And then I actually downloaded and read it, and it was pretty.
Yeah, I read his thesis too. It was
pretty dense, but it was good. It was good.
It was interesting.
At that point, we were in touch with
we had been in touch with Ryan Dancy through Owen.
Yes.
We got a day, and the day was January 11th, the very next day after that.
Yes. And at that point, so at this point, January 11th, let's look at the timeline. That's 1 week.
It's 1 week from the day.
1 week. That was another Wednesday. So in 1 week, this all happened. And meanwhile, things were just going. Social media was losing their mind. And then the article started because, for whatever reason, it was dead. There was nothing going on in the news. And I mean nothing. And it was the perfect storm of people were starting to cover this. And it was starting to get, first it was like the geek news, and then it started to get larger geek news coverage, and the Gizmodos, and Gizmodo was going article every day. They were covering it. And then it started to get picked up by national news. Then it was starting to get picked up by financial national news. Then it was starting to get picked up internationally. And that's when you know you're in trouble, when this little esoteric, strange bit of geek culture suddenly became international financial news.
Because it was in international financial news, and even just basic news international, like Baron DeRop from Dungeon Masterpiece, friend of the show, was interviewed for like UK Daily Mail and several other places that were just like mainstream media in multiple countries about this, and it was going big. Like, it was clear that this was a big enough one. You know, there was an NPR about it, which to me, tabletop is usually not on NPR. The last time it had been was when Jessica Redicop, who's also a friend of the show, and I were on NPR for like the union effort and the tandem effort of freelancers who were not even in the union to support the union for Paizo, which was an unusual occurrence, and so interesting enough that NPR wanted to pick it up.
And then
this is the kind of thing that broke out of hobby media and into mainstream. Yeah,
and the Legal Eagle contacted me, and he did do a video on this because he wanted to talk to me about it. I'm like, man, Hasbro is screwed. I was like, this has really got it out of control.
If I remember, he wound up being too busy to do stuff with us, but he did go with Matt Colville and make the video in the end.
Yeah, that's right. So on January 11th, we brought the original architect, the man himself, who wrote the OGL, Ryan's Dancy. And I have to say, that might be the best interview we ever did.
It was interesting because we were
so
considering
good.
inviting him and Owen is like, no, you just want Ryan because he's going to tell you so many things, and I would only distract from that video because he was the one in the room for all of this stuff, and this is going to be a great video. And Owen was 100% correct that it was a great video with Ryan. You should probably watch it if you want to hear how things were back in the day when OGL was created. Hear anecdotes that really tell you how much of a betrayal the thing last year was because of how Ryan went to other competitors at the time and is like, look, I know that sometimes contracts can be a trick. This is real. We really want you to be in there. We really want you to be safe. We don't want you to have to use the lawyers. We want this to be open. This is what we really believe in. We're not coming after you. Please do this. He put his own personal stake on the line to convince people that like knew him but were competitors at the time that this was a legit thing, and he talks about that in the video. Also, he started like a change.org petition that he said was inspired by us contacting him for the video and bringing him in to start another thing. I don't think that ever got as big as the Open D&D, but it was a simultaneous movement that was going on at the same time.
Yeah, well, there was a lot, but the Open D&D really took off. And by the way, I was writing Mike. Mike had to manually, because what would happen is people would sign it, and then he had to manually put them onto the website. It wasn't
he basically DDoS'd himself, not his site, but himself, the person who had to enter it, with how many people were signing up for it.
And then it kept going up, and it was up to like 10, 20, 30, 50, 70,000 very quickly. There
were so many people so fast, but like Steven's at the top, right? And then Steven's like, hey, Mark, I'm doing this thing with Mike, sign up for it. If you look to see how many people got in before I did at that point, it's a ton. Like I'm down way down. That's how fast people were signing up for this lightning speed.
Yeah, I'm like, you didn't put me at the top. I'm like in the top 10.
I didn't say you were the number one. No. But you're near the top. You're near the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And you're among the first few people that are on the list. Right. And then I am way down in the order that I sent it to him.
And it capped it.
There are so many people.
It capped at 77 because he stopped updating it. But if he kept going, it probably would have been over 100. And that was something else, is that once the D&D movement started, that it really told a story. And it was very important that started, because in the articles that then covered it would say, oh, this is what they're trying to do, because you need two sides. And they're trying to make it so that you have to pay a certain amount of money to Hasbro. And right now, on the other side is the people who are the fans, and here's a petition with 50, 60, 70,000 people saying no. And that's what made the article. And if we didn't have the Open D&D movement, I don't think we would have gotten nearly as many articles, because there was like the good and the bad and the ugly. You had to have both sides. But then it started to get even more interesting.
Oh, yes. This was just us bringing up more information, more backstory, because up until that point, we did not see any movement from WoTC, right?
Nothing.
It seemed almost as if they're supposed to be up on the 4th, that they had seen the backlash and gotten a deer in the headlights look. At least they realized, oh crap. We thought we could separate out those 750,000 people from the herd like lions and cut them off, but people are circling the wagons. Mm-hmm. This is not working. What are we going to do? And they did not respond for over a week.
Well, they didn't just respond for over the week, but then I had an idea. And I used to work with Blizzard, and I worked on World of Warcraft, and I know a lot about subscription services. I know a lot about how they work. I won't get into all of it. I've talked about this many times. So basically, there's a cost. There's a cost to get a subscriber, okay? We'll just say a subscriber might pay over the course of a year. I'm just going to make up a number, $100 a year. It might cost them It costs them 50, maybe even 100, maybe even $150 per subscriber. There's this cost associated with how much it costs to get a subscriber. And then they do this math where, okay, as long as we keep them for 6, 8, 10, 12 months, we get back our investment and then everything's profit after that. And so they have to make sure that you keep a certain number. Now, the other thing is that D&D Beyond has been out for so long that these numbers are usually extremely stable, okay? They can figure out after years of like, this is how many subscribers we'll get every month. This is how many subscribers we'll lose every month. And this is how much it costs to get subscribers. And these charts are like straight graphs. And I said, you know what? We start messing up those graphs, this will destroy Hasbro. It will really make them pay attention, because us talking wasn't going to do it. But if those graphs start breaking and suddenly it costs them $200, $300, $400 to get new subscribers, and people who are the whales, people who have been subscribing. I remember at Blizzard, they were like, you know who our favorite people were? People who signed up for World of Warcraft and never played. That was their favorite people, because it's just free money and they don't even have to worry about maintenance or, dealing with them or like server, load or anything. And there's a lot of those people. And there's a lot of people who signed up for D&D Beyond and they just kept it. And then through a private channel. Now, there was a private channel going on where all the D&D influencers were talking to each other. I was on it. Mark was on it. I won't say who was on it. Everyone was on it. I'll leave it at that. Okay, we're all on it, okay? And we were all talking to each other. And I'm not going to give you the exact quotes because I don't want to out this person, but I basically wrote and said at 12 o'clock on this January 12th, wow, look at this, Mark. It's January 12th at 12:12 p.m. Isn't that weird? I wrote, they aren't going to back down. We need to shift the message to having people cancel their D&D Beyond subscription. That's all WoTC cares about now. They're going to continue to delay, and they're going to try again later. And that's what I truly believed. And person wrote me back and said, yes, that's what I've been hearing. And I said, we need to start to shift our messaging to this. We need to shift our messaging to canceling D&D Beyond subscriptions, because that's all they care about. And so a lot of people followed up on this. Instructaboy did, Ginny D did, D&D Beyond, not D&D Beyond, the D&D, Open D&D had a pop-up that said cancel your subscription, and then the D&D Beyond movement began.
Mm-hmm.
That day, so many people were canceling D&D Beyond. It crashed the server.
Yep.
They got it back up. Then
they were going to make a response that day. January
we'll get
12th.
to that. We'll get to that.
But they were going to anyway.
They were. And then they got it back up, and then they removed or made it harder for you to cancel your subscription. Then they removed the ability to cancel your subscription through your website, which, by the way, is illegal. You can't do that.
Yep. They illegally removed the subscription cancellation because so many people were unsubscribing.
Yes. And
which is wild.
And then we gave instructions on how you write them and email to cancel your D&D Beyond subscription. By the way, since then, I've spoken to people at Hasbro who are no longer, WoTC, who are no longer there, and they said that freaked them out. That was it. That was the tipping point when they started to see those cancellations, and it was literally crashing their servers, and you had people like Ginny D saying cancel your subscription. That was when they started to realize they were really in trouble. And also, more importantly, they probably lost years worth of growth in just a day. I'm not trying to take too much credit for this, but
You were one of the people who
that.
you were one of the people who really started talking about it in the early times. Obviously, starting the snowball is different than pushing the snowball to when it got really big, but I think you played an important part in this, Stephen. I think that's definitely true. So they were going to give a video update that evening. It was kind of a supposedly something that like contacts who had reason to know that they had already recorded that video knew that it was going to come out on that day.
Yes, I had contacts who told me that they recorded a video at WoTC.
You know what? We didn't realize how effective what Steven and others were pushing for with canceling the subscription was going to be in getting them to like be like, oh man, we have to scrub all of that. We've got to figure out something. We've got to do something fast, but we can't say whatever we were going to say in that video. We have to change it up. We have to stop this. We have to stop hemorrhaging. So we did a watch party to see what the video was going to be. And the video never showed up. But we had, at one point, over 9,000 people, which I remember because I was like, it's over 9,000. It was like at one point during the stream. And
that was crazy.
That is so many people that were watching us live at the same time. I was freaking out because at one point we were on at the same time as Critical Role, admittedly pretty near the beginning of Critical Role, and they had not picked up all of their people. And we had more. They then got more because they're Critical Role. But whatever, that is a lot of people. And they never did the video because they were scrambling for something else. But we stayed online and we wound up announcing the orc license from Paizo because that came on during the stream.
Yes.
And that crashed. The Paizo servers went over 9,000 people went into that immediately. Because normally it would have taken a while to find something that was up on the Paizo blog. That's not like a place that a lot of people go normally to get their news, the Paizo blog. But that crashed the Paizo servers for the orc license.
Yeah, it was, I believe so. What was happening is that the stream, I think the live stream was supposed to be at 6 p.m. for WoTC. And it was going to be on Twitch. And we had it up. And I had contacts. I know people who were in the room where the video was made. Never came out. I'm very curious to see what that video said. But then they said they canceled it. And they were like, oh yeah, that's an old schedule. We're never going to be, that was nothing. Don't worry about that. And then at the same time, I was talking to Paizo because they said, well, at 8 p.m., we're releasing Orc. And I actually even asked them, "Can you move it up a little? Do
you want 9,000 people?"
So I was like, "Can you move it up to like 7? Because it's going to be a little hard for me and Mark to tap dance for an hour and a half."
And we did it. We lost some of those people. They didn't get everyone they would have gotten if they could have moved it up an hour and a half, but they sure got a lot.
They were
probably like 6, 7, whatever.
Well,
there's still a lot of people.
I knew it was up.
It was enough to put down their site, so it was probably too many people.
They wrote me and said it's up. We went on, we showed it, we read it, and then their site crashed.
The reason I know that it was us is that we didn't get it moment to moment, like it was a few seconds or whatever later. And when I was told, because we found out, I got to the site just fine. But then when we told everyone on the stream, and then I tried to go back on for another thing, the site was down.
Yeah.
So it was, we're sorry for DDoSing, but it did get a lot of people interested in seeing the orc license. And I think it ultimately was a significant contributing factor with that many thousands of people to more people joining into discussion groups like the Reddit for Pathfinder 2 and getting into Pathfinder 2. Like that was an interesting tipping point moment where one company seemed to pick up the slack when another was dropping the ball. Now, given that WoTC was scrambling and that they were really afraid because of the cancellations, they did manage to work quickly. Like this month we said seemed like a year for us because everything was happening in such quick speed that it seemed drawn out. I'm sure it was for the people at WoTC who had to do this, because by the next day, the 13th, they had a response. No, I'm not going to say it was a good response. In fact, I'm going to say it was incredibly condescending, and I can't believe that they put it out. But they did have a response.
Boy, did they have a response. By the way, an aside before we get into this infamous response, behind the scenes, something very interesting was happening. Third-party publishers like myself were having astronomical numbers of sales. Okay, I sold a lot that month. I'll leave it at that. Like January and February, I think it was the best January ever. And people like Goodman Games and Cobalt Press and lots of people were saying that was the best January they ever had in their lives. And people were coming out to support third-party and other developers. And then people like Kelsey Dion with Shadow Dark and Black Flag and all these people who were going to be doing Kickstarters, and they were going to launch their Kickstarters in like March. They all had to rush, and they all had to get their Kickstarters out in January because they were scared to death that
they wanted to grandfather it in.
Right.
Part of it was because some of these later things that WoTC would eventually say, they reassured people that you would be grandfathered in by a certain point, so that you didn't that it didn't freak people out before the license was even released that you would kickstart and then be under the new license if you did it right now. Mm-hmm. And so people wanted to make sure that we're grandfathered in.
Mm-hmm. And before we get to this, do like and subscribe. I see only some likes. Come on, people. Don't you have likes. Thumbs? Because if you subscribe, I win, and so do you. There we go.
Oh no, Steven, now everyone's gonna unsubscribe.
Oh no, don't unsubscribe. I'm sorry.
Battle Zoo, be gone. Battle Zoo, be gone. Back. Don't ever say you won.
Never say that. So
wait. Okay, so Steven, you've been, you've done marketing and PR for a lot of different things.
Yes.
Would you say, or would you not say to a client that they should ever say to when their customer base is kind of going against them, we won and so you won and so did we? Would you think that is a good thing to say or a bad thing to say?
No, you never. You have to be completely. You have to apologize. You have to genuflex and beg for forgiveness and honest. You have to be honest. Okay.
Yeah, and this is what they said. This is just like. This is like what?
Well, here's what's fascinating. So here's the response, and it was an updated open game license. Now remember, it was over a week. I think it was 10 days of complete silence.
It was 9 days. It was 9 days, and do keep in mind that they were going to have a video the day before, so they probably scrambled it up in less than a day or a day in response to the D&D Beyond movement. And crashing them with subscription removals. They probably scrambled up some new thing.
Yeah. Here it is. Last couple of thoughts. First, we won't be able to release a new OGL today because we need to make sure we get it right, but it's coming. Second, you're going to hear people say that they won and we lost because making our voices heard forced us to change our plans. Those people will only be half right. They won, and so did we. Now, no one remembers the next part, which was also interesting.
Our plan was always to solicit the input of our community before any update to the OGL. The drafts you've seen were attempting to do just that. We want to always delight fans and create experiences together that everyone loves. We realized we did not do that this time. We are sorry for that. Our goal was to get exactly the type of feedback on which provisions worked and which did not, which we ultimately got from you. Any change this major could only have been done well if we were willing to take that feedback, no matter how it was provided. So we are. Thank you for caring enough to let us know what works and what doesn't, what you need, and what scares you. Without knowing that, we can't do our part to make the new OGL match our principles. Finally, we'd appreciate the chance to make this right. We love D&D's devoted players and the creators who take them on so many incredible adventures. We won't let you down.
That part is just as bad, by the way. They're like, because they were trying to rewrite history.
Yeah, because they said that they always were going to take feedback when they specifically told people you have until the 4th to sign this.
Yeah.
See,
that's when I really started to, and every time I was just getting madder and madder and madder because I had proof. I got receipts. People were there, and we were reporting it. It's like I just don't understand why they were just digging the holes deeper each time.
Maybe they thought that they could spin it because they saw that there was a fully written document, but they thought they could spin the existence of that document, especially to people who weren't completely plugged in, their way. But they messed up because they didn't understand how the people who were following this message were able to get nuanced information about it, and they were not going to fall for that.
Yeah. So, by the way, Mitros for $10 said WoTC owned D&D Beyond for approximately 6 months before the OGL announcement. Not a long time. Seemed like this was planned before part of the purchase of course, D&D Beyond. Here's the thing. To this day, no one knows exactly who is responsible for this concept, this idea of revoking the OGL and doing this. No one knows. And I'll be honest, I haven't really pushed that hard to find out because I don't think it really matters in the end. It obviously was at a very top level. It was probably someone in the C-suite, and it probably was someone who just obviously doesn't understand this medium, this game. And Professor Dungeon Master is putting out a video, I think, publicly tomorrow about this, and he said something fascinating, is that the people in the C-suite were all like kids or in college. They did not grow up with D&D, and they just didn't understand the culture, so they don't even know. Like, the OGL was created, some of these people were like 5 years old, when the OGL was created, or some of these people were in, middle school or high school. So they just didn't understand the culture of Dungeons and Dragons. They didn't understand the culture of role-playing games, and they didn't understand and saw.
I don't think that's necessarily a fair shake.
Well, this is my point, is that they didn't.
I don't think that's a fair shake that someone who's in. So look,
well,
as someone who was in high school when the OGL was written, I think that many people who were in high school when the OGL was written understand the culture. I think that the last thing you said, that they don't understand the culture of the games, is 100% correct. But
right.
The sort of ageist thing of like, if you're not past a certain age, you automatically can't understand the culture of the game is not even needed. The point is, what's really important is these were not gamers who played the game. They were not people invested who cared about the game, like the creators who work on the game are. And so to them, this is just a number on a spreadsheet that generates a certain amount of money, and they would like that number to be higher on the spreadsheet.
My point is that the OGL helped bring D&D back, because there was a time where D&D was
going down.
It was going to die. And the OGL kept it alive when no one else cared. And I think that's what's important. And that's where you maybe don't appreciate that when you're younger. And you're not, I wouldn't call it ageist, but you don't see.
I don't think you had to be a certain age. I think you had to be a certain type of player.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
Regardless of your age. I know people who are younger who are plugged into this, and people older who aren't. It's a level of being casual versus deeply into the game.
Okay.
And if you're really lucky, you could have a CC person who is, but you probably won't. But not unless they hire for that as a quality.
But this was definitely planned. I mean, we talked about this before.
Yes, we can see it. But you can see it because they even like, it's obviously planned. That, like, the December 21st didn't show their hand, but it definitely matches everything that happened later. Once you see them both in tandem, you can see how they're both talking about the same thing.
So on January 13th, we also received a leaked copy of the unreleased OGL 2.0, which we discussed publicly on YouTube. A lot of people did at that point. And
yes,
the 2.0 was, it was better, but it had these weird restrictions on, I barely remembered the 2.0. It was, because it was that the one that had the restriction on pantomime, or was that 1.2?
Now I'm forgetting about the difference between the 2.0 and the 1.2.
Yeah,
because there was a 2.0 and a 1.2.
Yeah.
One thing I can tell you is that their lawyers obviously hated the fact that they couldn't get rid of the 1.0A, because as they kept making these, they never got rid of the one that was my least favorite line, which is the one that just said they can stop it for any reason at any time.
Right.
They always kept the ability
bad.
to get rid of it, which meant no matter how much better it got, it was never really something you could ever, start a business on and feel reliable at all, because they could just revoke it at any time.
Yeah, there was a lot. The thing is, at this point, the 2.0 and 1.2 sort of merged into each other in my mind, because they all were terrible.
But they were different. They were a week away from each other.
They are.
So they published 2.0 and it had slightly different terms. One of the two of them, which I can't remember which one right now, was really bad for VTTs. It revealed two things, one of which was that
was 1.2.
I think that was 1.2. That the VTTs got screwed over, and that they were in a separate document which could be edited at any time, even if the first one wasn't.
That was confirming that they're all digital, because then it got 2.0 was bad, 1.2 was much better, but it still went heavy against the digital domain, and then we're
1.2, which we'll get to in a week, fixed a lot of the things.
Right, the morality clause, it was a disaster.
It still had the thing that was a problem with digital, and because they had a lot of ways to revoke it, it was still not safe, even though they actually did remove a bunch of bad stuff in 1.2. So anyway, they had 2.0 leaked on January 13th, which, just to be clear, they did not publish 2.0, the one that was leaked, because it was really bad and everybody was talking about it and didn't like it. They never published that.
Nope.
We also have Bob Tarantino on the show to talk about his PhD thesis on OGL, also on the 13th. So we have multiple things on the 13th.
A lot going on that day.
Yeah, well, guess what? We got to rest, Stephen.
Yes, we did.
Finally got to rest.
Well, then
we finally got to rest that month.
Yeah,
for a few days.
Got quiet.
For a few days.
It
got quiet. Everyone went back to do. WoTC came up with ideas of what they were going to do, and on the 18th. So this was 5 days after we got the leak 2.0, which they never published. They put up a D&D Beyond talking about a conversation that they were going to have, a working conversation about the open game license, to let people know kind of where they were at that point in time. And that's the first time a name was put to it of who was going to be a fall person for them. And it was Kyle Brink, who it sounds like, as an executive producer, that Kyle was a boss type for the creatives, who was therefore a servant of the executives. He was kind of in between those two tiers and was at a lot of meetings saying what the creative team wanted, but not either not powerful enough to get their say into it, or just the other executives didn't listen to him. At this point, he introduces himself and has become sort of the face of apologizing. He talks about how that you can see it on a let me put a link in the chat, or is Stephen maybe even showing it?
I'm showing it now here.
He's showing it now. Yeah. You can see it right now. So he talks about himself. It's way better than the statement that they put out with the We Won and You Won and So Did We.
Well, they also list out exactly their efforts.
It's personal. They list out some exact statements that they want to make sure you know that they're not coming after you for certain things. And then he said, we're going to tell you something on or before Friday.
Yeah,
he gave a specific date for when he was going to talk again. There were so many reasons that I think we talked about it from a PR perspective, why there were so many reasons this was a better statement than the previous one. Not that the bar was set very high for the previous, because it was made personal. It gave specific statements about when you'd hear from him again. It gave specific statements of certain things that were cleared up. It was a much better statement there. And in fact, not only did we hear by Friday, but we actually were able to hear even sooner than that. Although that same day, we did have a live chat, a live stream with Eric Mona about the Orc license, because Orc was moving in tandem to this. Everything was moving. Paizo was moving. WoTC was moving. Those days of waiting where there wasn't a lot of news in the front line, there was a lot of discussion in the back line.
Yeah, the 19th.
Yeah, wasn't that when the...
Well, so what happened is, on the 18th, right? So on the 18th, this was released.
Oh, okay. I got the 2 days mixed up. Yeah. There was so much going on.
Yeah, well, That's why I gave you an outline, Mark. So here we go.
Yeah, let me
We have
see.
the OGL content. Your revenue's not going to be touched. The ownership, you will own everything. No license pack requirements.
Oh, yeah,
so, like,
yeah, I see.
they did outline some of the key requirements here. The DM Guild content, like, it
Mhm.
suddenly, and I knew that would cool down everyone, and it definitely did. It definitely started to cool down everyone, but the damage was done at that point. It was so fascinating to watch this because I remember before this that WoTC could do no wrong. WoTC loved their fans. They loved D&D. They
put the creators up front who do love the fans and love D&D. The creators who work at WoTC, they do. They're not putting on a show. There's not a facade there where they're pretending. They love the game and the fans.
Yep.
And that's the people that people were interacting with.
Yep.
And the whether it's good or bad, it's actually probably bad for society. People conflate companies as like an amalgamation of the individual people that they talk to at the company. So if you see 4 people from the company who love the fans and who talk to you, you're likely to now think that company name loves the fans, when really it means those 4 people love the fans, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard for us to understand. We think of companies as a single entity rather than a 1,000-headed hydra that could be going in all directions at once.
So on the 19th is when, let's see, is that here?
Yeah, right. The 19th is when they actually put out the 1.2 because they said, we'll get back to you by Friday. They got back the next day.
Thursday.
They beat their deadline. And 1.2 fixed a lot of the stuff that was in there. However, it still had several poison pills, and they put out a survey. And we were wondering at the time, like, are people going to be okay with the fact that they really did roll back, like, I'd say 80% of the things that were in there that were issues were rolled back. The problem
it's still in here. The 1.2 still works, the link.
Yeah, the problem was the other 20% that they kept included the ability to get rid of the whole thing. And a few others that were very, very deadly for certain demographics. And they asked very specific questions on the survey, like some of which were I thought they could have asked it slightly better to get more nuanced responses, but it was fine for the survey. It was definitely going to get them responses. We didn't know what kind. They didn't know what kind, as we found out soon enough.
So, and that was the day that on January 19th, we also had a live chat.
Yes, that was the day with Eric,
where we had Eric
Orc.
Mona come on and talk about the Orc license, which was still in just like the very, very beginning stages. And this is the beginning of the OGL 1.2. This is the blah blah blah. Yeah, this is and here's the content creator badges. They were very big into
badges.
Yeah, but here, do you see what they did here? I totally forgot this. They still tried to deauthorize the notice of deauthorization of OGL.
Yes, they did. That was what I was saying. The 20% that they kept were still poison pills.
Right.
The
they
deauthorization.
They were doing everything.
The deauthorization,
in their power.
the ability to revoke the new one. There were still like some of the things that were scariest were removed, but some of the ones that were the most sticking points were kept. And that was ultimately a big problem for them.
Right, because they don't want anyone. So this is the thing. It was like when you put out these licenses or contracts, and everyone knows this, is that there's things in there you really want to keep, and there's things you don't care about. And when I read this contract, I thought, this is it. This is their final hand. This is showing, okay, we didn't care about all that other stuff. Fine, you get to keep your percentage of money. Fine, you don't need to actually register with us. All that stuff, we don't care about that. But what we do care about is we do not want anyone to be publishing on any other license. We want you to stop having the ability to publish 1.0A because that is the stupidest concept ever in their minds. Like, why would we give you the ability?
They didn't like it because it gave too much power to other people.
Way too much power, right. They wanted to control...
In their minds.
Yeah, in their minds.
It was actually a brilliant concept that saved the company, but in the minds of these lawyers coming in, just like with the GSL before it, they were like, we don't want this.
Yeah. And then they wanted to also control digital content and VTTs.
Yep.
So,
and we saw that directly. The thing that was scariest wasn't just that the VTT policy was pretty draconian about things like animations. It was that it was separately listed, and the OGL 1.2 said you agreed to the VTT policy, which is found at page X. And they could change page X to literally anything, and you agreed to whatever they changed it to. And then they even said they could change it at any time. So even if the VTT policy was, you can do whatever you want, and you agreed to it, and then they changed it to, you can't do any VTTs. We own all of it. You owe us 100% of revenue on VTTs. They could. And you would have already made the VTT at that point. There were some things about even 1.2, which I will still fully admit they backtracked on, like I said, about 80% point by point of the things, but the last 20% had some, like you said, Steven, it had some of the things they really wanted and some of the things that really, without them, it didn't really work. And now they said the survey that they put out would last until February 3rd from January 19th, and that they would then talk again on or before February 17th. So keep that in mind. That's how long they plan to keep the survey out. And so that's what we were working under, that assumption at the time.
And they also had things in here like, we may immediately terminate your license.
Yeah.
And if we terminate it and you don't cure that breach within 30 days, then you're terminated. But who determines what you breached and whether you cured it? They do.
They are the only ones who did. They can just do whatever they want. They had tons. They had 3 different ways to get you out of it that were still in there.
Yeah, it was a bad.
I remember that. You can see our stream about this.
Yeah, we had one in detail. So it was fascinating to watch from a business point of view, because you can see through 3 documents what they were thinking. Like you can read the documents and see their mindset. You can really
understand the mindset of the executives and the lawyers from this. You can see as they pulled things back and like, well, this is the thing everybody was talking about in there when they were angry with Beyond. Maybe if we pull this one out, we can still keep this thing that ultimately gives us the real power down the line.
Yeah, 1.2 is not a secret document. This is all coming from their website.
It was completely released.
Yeah, it's right here.
They put out a draft of it. They said that one really was a draft because they weren't trying to get anyone to do it yet. They put out a survey. They said that it was going to stay up for a while. So at this point, they were in a submerged mode of listening to the surveys. A few days later, we had Linda Codega on the show to talk about the topic in general.
Well, you're skipping around.
What did I miss?
A few things. One, we have a super chat that asked
I did miss the super chat. I don't think we missed anything else.
We did. You missed January 20th. Do you think that publishers will regain increased confidence in their OGL 1.0a works, or move to CC BY SRD 5.1 and stand that with others not on Beyond? I mean, we still use OGL 1.0a. I have no fear, personally.
I think at this point, now that they have done, ironically, doing the CCBY makes me feel like the OGL 1.0a is pretty safe, because it makes no sense to try to revoke the 1.0a when the CCBY is there anyway. Yeah. And the 1.0a makes it easier to do share alike stuff than the CCBY. You have to do a lot more legwork on the share alike with the CCBY. So it's general. If you want people to be able to share alike with you, I think it's easier to use the OGL 1.0a.
Yeah. We need to have aspects of our work protected, which OGL 1.0a does. And, none of these are perfect. I mean, heck, I can write up my own license if I really wanted to.
Yeah, and yours wouldn't be perfect either.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like every license has its pluses and minuses.
Right.
And at this point, one of the biggest strengths with OGL 1.0a is that it's been around for so long, now 24 years, and it's been accepted by the community that there's this concept of law that if it's assumed to work a certain way and hasn't been tested, and if you're the first one to test it, then that's the way it works, if that makes sense. Like, a good example is, it's a little different, is like, if this actually happened to me, is that if you have property and your neighbor puts a fence on your property and you don't do anything about it for like 20 years, well, guess what? That's their property now. Even if the lines say that's your property, it's like, well, they've had that for 20 years and you never said anything about it. That's your property now. Or sorry, that's your neighbor's property. They own that part, and you lost it. And it's a very similar aspect. Is you can't just come around and say, well, yeah, now this is how the law actually works, or this is how we expect OGL to work. I'm like, it's not how it's worked for the last 23 years. So I hate to break it to you, unless you can prove otherwise. That's not how it works. So I'm not too worried about OGL.
Right.
On January 20th.
Right. The FAQs need a little bit of context first. Yeah. So it is important to note that we were mostly talking about our own videos and then vaguely mentioning that there were a lot of other videos. But it is important to note that many people during this time were very panicked. Things were moving around. People within WoTC were giving leaks to different streamers. And sometimes these leaks what?
It was all over the place. Everyone was getting
Sometimes these leaks contradicted each other or other things that also came out of WoTC, and were like, we tried to get multiple sources every time, but some of them turned out, some of the people who had the best, fastest leaks also had some that turned out to maybe not have always been as accurate as well. In either case, WoTC put up a frequently asked question on the 20th that was directly a response to things in our streams, in some of those other streams that had put out certain claims from leaks. It was clearly just like a direct response to that. So like, we and other people were all saying this looks like it's really aimed at VTTs, and they're like, no, it's not aimed at VTTs. We love VTTs. It was like almost like a defensive response to each of those things. It's like, did Wizards review feedback left by the survey? Because one of the leaks, which was not from the D&D team. It was from like a tech team that said that the D&D team didn't read the surveys, which they do. And so they were like, no, we read the surveys.
Yeah.
And then they talked about, are they going to do a $30 subscription? No, these are rumors, they said. That was another one that came from like a slide that was turned out to like have been like spoofed or something like that a different channel reported on, I think. And then they also claimed that they're not working on AI DMs, probably because they're going to call their whatever assistive tools something else and not that. And they answered other questions too, because people have been talking about how they could use hateful and harmful content claims to remove anybody for any reason. And they were like, we're taking your input seriously on this. We'll clarify about that. So in some cases, they're like, okay, yeah, we'll clarify from 1.2. In some cases, clearly they heard what everyone was saying and was upset about in 1.2. And they talked about fixing some of them, but they certainly never agreed to remove the revoking of the 1.0A and some of these other aspects of it that were the most tricky.
Yeah, so by the way, behind the scenes, I was talking to Linda Codega a lot. I was talking to a lot of people. At this point, it was so mainstream. Everyone was like, it was almost getting out of control. It was just like, we were obviously doing a lot of videos. Everyone was doing videos talking about this because this was the only story in town. And they completely lost the narrative. Like, there was a time, I'd say right until D&D Beyond began, and then they lost the narrative, and it was too late. It was nothing they could really do. They couldn't push their way through. And don't forget, the D&D movie was coming out in March, and at this point they had nothing going on. They were barely posting. They weren't talking about a thing, and they need to start doing interviews. They started to need to do press tours. And in retrospect, and I've talked about this many times, is that people felt that the campaign, the press campaign, was terrible and the advertising was bad for the movie, especially people who are not in the industry. Hollywood people I've spoken to, like my brother.
Yeah, the Hollywood people, you said they said it pandered too much to us.
Yes.
And that to the people who knew D&D, it was not good for the lay person, right?
Oh, yeah, I love the movie. And the thing is, I think this hurt the movie because they had to start late. And I knew for a fact, and I was saying this at the time, like, this is going to end one way or the other. Like, they had to wrap this up because they could not. If there was no D&D movie, I have a feeling this could have gone on for months. But because there was a D&D movie, they had to wrap this up because they only had 6-8 weeks to really get all that promotion in. And they probably had a lot of tie-ins. They had the books, they had all the character sheets, they had so much time. They had actual action figures. Like, they needed to get going. And that was our advantage. So on January 24th, and by the way, we released a lot of videos. Now we're getting to the highlights. Linda Kodega came on. And that was a fun
fun show.
That was fun.
Just in general, Lynn is a good guest to have on the show. But then something big happened on the 27th. Because remember, it was going to be February. February 3rd was when the surveys were going to close. And then 2 weeks later, they were gonna analyze it all. They were going to get it together. They were going to tell us all about it. But guess what? The surveys were such a blowout that they came back like a week and a day after they released them. And we're just like, okay, it wasn't just a few people. All of you are on here. You're outpouring all of the reasons why there's a problem. You really, really, really don't like this. Even after we step back to 1.2, we got it. We're doing Creative Commons. They just like, somebody saw those surveys and they saw the movie, like you said, Steven, they saw the Be Gone, and they were just like, what will it take to make this stop? We need to stop the bleeding. We need to stop this hemorrhaging right now. And obviously they listened to someone who was like, well, if you put it on Creative Commons, then that's as open as it can be. And they listened to that person very quickly before they removed like Strahd and Beholder and Mind Flayer names from things that were put into Creative Commons. The names, not all the information about them. But and they got this done. They got it done pretty fast. Well, everything was happening in fast motion.
I guarantee what happened is someone sat down with the numbers and they said, okay, we're losing this many subscriptions. We've lost this much money.
Yeah.
We're losing this much potential. Because the numbers before the D&D movie, so the D&D movie, you can go to websites like Box Office Mojo and stuff, and they have where they think it's going to open. And the D&D movie was up at 70 million originally, which is good. That's a really good opening. And it went all the way down to 30 million. And they're like, dude, stop. It's over. Like, whatever you're trying to do, we've lost more money in whatever you would have gained by this. Like, it was such a disaster. And one day they're going to definitely be teaching this and talk about it. This is the new Coke of our century. Is that it's like, okay, we lost just from opening, because also the opening determines the rest of the movie. So I can say if that's true, it went from 70% to 30%, and it was about, I forgot the opening weekend, it was about 40 million or so. But then that determines the rest. So whatever the first weekend, it always goes down from there, right? So that could have cost them $100 million. Between 70 and 30, that could have been $150 million in just ticket sales. So that was a loss. Then you have everyone who canceled D&D Beyond. I have friends who had the badge that showed them as like the original people, like people who started with D&D Beyond. They all canceled. I know a lot of people, and these people are hardcore. All canceled, never going back. And these are people who were just sitting there churning, making the money, and they're not coming back. And these people are hardcore. They probably lost, I used to have the numbers, but I mean, they probably lost at least 300-400 million over this thing. Maybe more over the amount of time we're going to see. But they lost so much money and so much goodwill. Whatever they were going to gain by this new OGL, it wasn't worth it. It's like, that's it. Cut your losses. It's over. And boy, do we have good timing, Mark, because again, we just happened to be on the air. Of course, we were also on the air like every minute, it seemed. We were always on the air when these things happened.
We were on the air when this dropped.
Yeah. We were on the air when this dropped. And then we had a party. That was the fun stream, because then I just started, everyone was writing me, and it was like a celebration. Linda Codega came on, and
Yep,
they were
Derek
talking
came
to
on. They
us.
were just like unexpected guests
We
who
got
just
Derek Melenda came on.
came on to the show.
Yeah, we just had people jump on, just talk to us out of nowhere. It was like a complete mess. And then we were looking at it, and it was strangely surreal, that whole thing, because we're like, did they really do this? Did they? Because I didn't expect this. It was like it could have been as good as they literally just kept OGL 1.0A alone, and that was it. But then they put in the Creative Commons, and if you look here, yeah, they're like,
that actually gives people more options.
I know.
Like they wanted to do something, and they wanted to get it right.
They needed it to die, and I think they also said, look, not only do we need this to die, but we need to somehow spin this in a good way. And in fact, they couldn't even just say, okay, we're done. And they had to actually and they lost so badly that they had to not just give up and then capitulate and give the community something in return, because that's how badly they lost. And they did. And what's fascinating is that they also said they were going to do a whole bunch of things. What did they say? That they were going to Bob the World Builder did a good video of how they were going to follow up, and they were going to release the SRD, I think, in Spanish, and they were going to follow up with, keeping their word and making. There was a lot they were going to do, and they pretty much followed up on a fair amount of it. But at this point, that was it. After the January 27th, this sort of just disappeared, and since then, and we have other videos, I won't get into that whole part. And then Kyle Brinks started his apology tour. Again, tried to save more face. They had the summit where they wanted to really, try to put this behind them. But the summit didn't even work out because everyone at the summit still wanted answers. And here we are, a year later.
I'm going to say this about the summit.
Yeah.
They did let them. They wanted to give lots and lots and lots of spin and only give a few questions, and they let the questions continue because everyone wanted them to, and they fielded them, and they fielded the people who were there said they answered pretty much all of the questions. Now, to be fair, they made a lot of promises that now that we're a year out, if we look back on it, they haven't always done all of the things that they said they were going to do. But they at least at that summit answered, and answered pretty well overall. But the follow through has not been great. And I'm going to say this, which is that as much as it could be discussion about the follow through and be like, were they insincere back then? I think that given how much but with layoffs, with shifting, with how many people are in the company and shifting strategies, it's certainly possible for the people at the time who made those promises to have bent them and then found out that they were not allowed to do them, or that they were the company was moving into something else without them being actively deceptive about them. But it's just a problem whenever you trust a company's word instead of a contract that's written or signed with the company, is that a company, like I said, is a hydra of 1,000 heads that are constantly moving around in every direction. And it's difficult that a company, without the person you were talking to at that company being dishonest with you, you can still wind up having what was said or what was promised verbally just not materialize.
So, by the way, there is a question that's, I feel, important. It says, do you feel like the lack of adding the word irrevocable to a new 1.0A is an issue? We actually answered this, and our lawyer answered this, and Ryan Dancy answered this, and the answer is not really, because you can't put in every contingency. If you put in every contingency, you'd have a legal document 20,000 pages long. So there has to be some assumptions of the law. And if you put in enough and just you don't have to put in every single word. Okay, that's the thing. If you put in enough words and you get the gist, that's good enough. I don't know the legalese. I'm kind of giving the I'd say, non-lawyer version of this, but he explained it better than I did. But just because the word irrevocable is not in there doesn't mean it's not irrevocable. So, no, you don't need to have every single word in there, because I guarantee you'll always find a word, if you look hard enough, that, oh, they didn't say this word, therefore we can use it. It's like, okay, really? Really? It's like you have to, there's some assumption in any contract. So since then, well, it was pretty weird when it was all over. I'll tell you that much. We didn't expect it to end, because we were all at that point still in the, okay, let's see where they go with this. We'll wait till February. And then
because they had said they had given a timeline, and they saw the writing on the wall. They saw how crushing it was, and they even revealed the numbers. And I believe that the numbers they revealed were true, because they were not good for them, and I don't see why they would have revealed, it was like at some point saying 90% were against certain aspects. Yeah. And let me put it this way. This is why I think it's definitely true. Let's suppose it was 95% that were against it. What's the point of lying and saying 90%? 90% still looks like it was an overwhelming majority. There's no reason to falsify it down to 90% from a number higher than 90%. They're both going to get the same impact, more or less. And there's obviously no reason for them to make it higher than it would be. So I just don't see any incentive, period, for it not to be the true number, even if you don't trust the integrity of that post. I think that was the real number. And it was 90% is a lot of us that said that we had problems with it. And I posted on it. I believe that they did read their feedback. And so I posted, I wrote fairly lengthy responses in the free response fields that were like, that, they weren't angry responses. They weren't saying, I didn't say anything mean to them even. I was just like, they were hopeful responses. They were like, I would like to publish things on OGL. I'd love to publish things that are still going on, but I can't do it with 1.2, and this is why not. Mm-hmm. And they did. They listened. So now they did in the end.
Now's the time to ask your questions. Not that people weren't asking them before, but if you got any more questions, bring them up now, because now comes the interesting point. And at the end of this, everyone was saying, "Oh, it's over, yay!" And I've said it. I said, no. That was the beginning. That was only the beginning. That was only 3-4 weeks. We still got a long way to go. And 2023, boy, did that prove me right. Because, boy, did they keep messing up in so many other ways. Pinkertons, I still can't believe that one. It was the two biggest shocks was when this was released and when the Pinkertons. I was like, are you kidding me? That's made up. I swear to God. I think Derek told me. I was like, there's no way that's true. And boy, you really can't make this stuff up, can you? But we still have 2024. And there's going to be a new license in there. And it's so funny because I think as soon as I get that book, everyone else is going to be opening it up and looking at the new classes and the new feats and new spells. First thing I'm going to do is open that thing. I'm going to flip right to the back because I want to see that license and read it in detail. I want to see exactly what it says, and I'm going to read every inch of that license. That's what I'm excited about. Mirtos wrote another super chat. Casual players will still probably play the next edition. But did they lose in their terms the whales in the definition? I'm the definition 1, and they definitely lost me and my friend. So here's the thing, and I've talked about this. I have a friend of mine who I consider an absolute hardcore geek who's been playing D&D since the 70s. He released a game. He made his own MMO type game on the Apple II Plus and Amiga. I mean, this guy went to Carnegie Mellon with me. He's a big geek, and he knew nothing about this. He actually asked me, he's like, "What's this OGL thing?" He didn't even know I was involved in it. And I also have my own group of players. They don't really. I'm not talking about Vanessa, and Lauren, because they know what's going on. Like, that group knew everything, but. And because those guys are a little bit more, they're actually in the industry. But my other group, who are a little more casual, and they're geeks, but they're casual. They didn't know. They didn't know anything about this. Now, they also only play Pathfinder. They don't play 5e, so, they're not tied in.
And it would have affected Pathfinder.
Oh, you're completely right. Completely right. But my point is that, for better or for worse, most people have no idea about this. And I would say that's probably like 99.8% of the people, probably even higher. If you say there's millions of players, they don't know. They don't know anything about this, nor do they care. All they want to do is just play the game. They don't care about this. They don't care about the drama. But, and this is a big but, the people who did know, and we used to say this, so in World of Warcraft, when it was at peak, 12.5 million players. And back then they had message boards. Remember those message boards? I don't know if they still even have them. And of those 12.5 million players, there was only a couple of hundred people, maybe almost 1,000, who really posted on those. And those people had so much power and so much influence that they can move mountains. They can move the overall psyche of the game. And boy, they really hated those. They loved them and they hated them because they had so much power, those few people. And they know that 99% of the people never posted on those boards. They just lurked. But those people can cause a lot of trouble. And we are those people. All of you watching, us especially, all the YouTubers, but all of you that are in the chat right now, all of you viewers, you are the ones who care. You're the ones who are watching this, who are aware of what's happening, or who are buying all the books. And you know what? We're the whales. We're the ones that buy everything, who spend hundreds. I think
there are whales who are less plugged in, though. Oh, I think there are people who buy all the books on autopilot and are not plugged in.
I agree, but my point is that, does it hurt? Doesn't help.
Yeah, it's at least some of the whales, right? It's not all of the whales, but it's a percentage of the whales are really plugged in, really invested in the industry.
Yeah. And more importantly, and this is what really hurt them, is that a year ago, if you went onto YouTube and you typed in D&D, everything was positive. Everything. It was all like how to do your builds, how to make a better game. Like, it was as positive as you can be. In fact, you couldn't even find something negative. And if you did, it was just for fun or snark.
I mean, you found stuff that was negative in the sense of system critique from people who were like into looking at many different systems. But when you're talking about the company,
right,
because they always put forward facing people at the company who genuinely love the game and love fans, and that's what they showed. That's who they were to everyone. So you wouldn't find people saying WoTC is evil and is going to do bad stuff to us at all back then, because WoTC hadn't really done bad stuff to the fan base like since 5e came out.
Yeah, but now you type in, and by the way, and this is an aside, but I'll get into, there's a reason why. Just follow my madness for a second, Mark.
I'm following you.
There's a lot of jobs that were lost last year. Linda Codega lost her job. A lot of websites and print is going away. And I've been following this very closely because more and more people are getting all their information from TikTok and YouTube, which is kind of scary.
As a YouTube channel that also gives news and other stuff, it is pretty scary that more people are getting all their information, because while we try to get like multiple different sources that
I
are
was a
saying
journalist
something
for 5 years, so I try to use the journalistic method on everything we do.
I've seen how easy it is to just say something.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that as a person who is now on YouTube and is talking about news that we were breaking back then, I do think that it's good to get a mixed media diet and not get all your news on everything from YouTube and TikTok. That's my personal opinion.
My point is, now when you go on YouTube, there's a lot. I did a search just before we went online. There's a lot of negative stories. Yes, I know I'm part of it, but I'm just reporting, okay? I'm not the one who sent the Pinkertons after people, all right? I'm not the one who misprinted a card deck for the Deck of Many Things for their big Christmas release and had to recall it all before it went. Like, I'm just reporting it, okay? We also reported the good stuff. I saw the VTT. I loved it. I loved the VTT. People seem
You
to
reported we had at least 3 good videos. The new VTT.
We had at least 3.
We had 3 that were directly praising something very directly, very positive, and that were after the OGL crisis.
Yeah.
The VTT, the maps when that came out, and the movie.
Yeah. Oh, I love. Yeah, Maps is great. VTT was great. I love that movie. It was one of my top 5 favorite movies last year. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Great movie.
So there were 3 super chats. Lord of the Unfinished Project said, with about 50% of their promises kept, do you think they can keep the trust they built up?
No, they don't have trust. They don't have trust right now.
I don't think they rebuilt their trust yet, especially with 50% of the promises not kept.
Well, they just fired 1,800 people. What trust do they have?
Well, not a lot of those were fired from WoTC, but even the amount that were fired was like too many, given that WoTC was the part of the company that was actually like doing stuff for them.
And people aren't. And people
I don't think they rebuilt their trust yet.
No, and people aren't dumb because Baldur's Gate 3 really, wow, did that save their bacon? But people also know that that's not them. That's Larian, and Larian. The more you learn about them, they are fantastic. They're the new Blizzard. They are a great developer. They're
the new, and when you say Blizzard, you're talking about the old. They're the new of the old Blizzard. They're not the new of Blizzard. The current Blizzard.
No, right. No. They were Blizzard back in the peak. Back
when Blizzard was not doing the kind of stuff it's doing now.
Well, they also weren't co-owned by Activision. They were the old
before
BioWare.
The pre-Activision Blizzard.
Or the pre-EA BioWare. That's what they are.
Pre-EA BioWare also is actually a great analogy, and I'm 100% with you on that.
You missed one before that, by the way. Super chat.
Yes, I intentionally skipped it because that person put a second super chat.
You're very smart.
To clarify themselves, I wanted to put them together.
Got it.
So
I'll let you handle super chats then.
Poikilos said, using orcs such as books for PF2 remastered makes parts such as spells free. Roll of Law says, did that matter to you? Or do you have opinion on orc clarification? Roll of Law was saying orc makes aspects of your third party work free. So I'm not sure that it does. And I would say consult your lawyer, because it's certainly not supposed to send out the parts that you're not trying to put out, but you are. If you're using the orc, you're trying to put the mechanics out so that other people can share alike. The orc is like the OGL in that sense. That's true of the OGL as well. If you're using the OGL and you make spells, and your spell was called Stephen Glicker's Marvelous Randomization, and you could say Stephen Glicker is not a free thing for you to use. He belongs to Roll for Combat, but that you can just call it Marvelous Randomization and use the mechanical parts of it. And you can get the character of Stephen Glicker as being protected. But in OGL or in Orc, you're not protecting the rules content of Stephen Glicker's Marvelous Randomization spell. So I'm not, maybe the question is leading to some other point. I've seen some of Roll of Law's videos, but I don't know that the orc makes you less protected than the OGL 1.0a would in that regard. That being said, we, at least on some of our most recent projects that we had to decide for, we're using things that were in the OGL. In some cases, not because WoTC wrote them, but because Paizo themselves wrote them in the OGL and hasn't put them into the orc yet, so you can't use them from orc with Paizo. And so we are sticking with OGL for now, even in some of our Pathfinder 2e specific content, because otherwise there's a very harsh limit on what Paizo content we can use.
So we had a non-OGL question. I actually do want to answer this one.
Let's do it.
Year of Monsters PDF backers, because we are having a new, it's not a Kickstarter, it's a backer kit, where we're going to be doing the Year of Monsters hardcover book
into a full print run, because it was never a full print run. It was like a kind of custom, small, tiny like demand run just for the backers and a few pre-order people.
And he said the PDF backers aren't getting any of the updated stuff from the hardcover release, right? No way to pay.
No, you get it all.
You get it all, baby. Now you get everything.
we are so thankful to you for supporting us originally. We're giving you everything. You don't need to do a thing. We'd love it if you add the hardcover during the hardcover backer kit. Yes. Especially since if that doesn't fund, nobody's getting the additional content. Yes. But whether you do anything or not, you're getting it all. You don't need to pay another cent. You're going to get it.
But that being said, I'm trying to figure out ways that you could help us and support it. But yes, we're actually adding about another 20-ish pages to get it up to about 196, 200 pages, trying to make it a nice beefy book. And if you ordered the Year of Monsters VTT or PDF for 5e or Pathfinder, you get it all for free. You'll just get it at the end. You'll just get a PDF with the new book. And then if you get the hardcover, you get the hardcover too. So there you are. And we're also using this. I'll tell you why. So we just did the Year of Legends, which just started, which you can get at battlezoo.com. And that is the continuation where you can play like angels and devils and evil eyes and arboreals and lots of fun stuff. Everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people are asking for a hardcover. So this is a test to see if we can release a hardcover. We want to see if we can
do it. Yeah. Because the amount that got the hardcover in Year of Monsters was not really enough on its own. But if this model works as a way to do a hardcover successfully, where we figure out how much it takes for a hardcover release afterwards, and we do a second thing like we did here, this could be a path for Year of Legends. And we'd love to do one for Year of Legends if there's a path, because not everyone, it's a minority, but the minority really, really want it. And we'd love to be able to get out enough people for that. So that's a great question in chat. And that's sort of something we'd like to do the same thing for Year of Legend if the numbers work out.
And by the way, someone asked, aren't shipping costs crazy pants?
Yes.
Shipping costs are what the shipping costs are. I have nothing to do with that.
They are their
what
special snowflake.
There's nothing I can do about that. People have, I talk about this, I just talked to my warehouse today about this, is that a lot of people get, I wouldn't say spoiled, but Amazon Prime has gotten people used to free shipping, and shipping has gone up a huge amount basically since COVID. There was a huge number of extras that were added onto shipping.
And they never took it off.
They never took it off. Like Australia has like down. They added like 75 cents for every pound as a COVID fee. They never removed it. There's a lot of countries did that where they would add like 50 cents or 75 cents per pound as a COVID fee, and they just kept it and they never removed it. And now shipping is very expensive, and there's nothing I can do about that. And that's why we offer everything digitally in multiple ways. And for both our 5e and Pathfinder products, everything we do, because we do as much as we can. But you also can get them in your stores if you really want the hardcover. For some of our books.
People in the chat who are clicking the link for the backer kit are getting the loading page, and so am I.
What do you mean the loading page?
It's just loading forever and it can't be reached.
If you go to
backerkit.rollforcombat.com, yes, that's the link that's in there.
All right. I apologize.
Just letting you know.
Why does this keep happening?
I don't know.
All right, let me give you the real link.
Oh, wait. HTTP did work. Whereas this link in the chat is HTTPS.
I did not do that. I'll have my guy fix that.
HTTP works.
All right, hold on.
But HTTPS, backerkit.rollforcombat.com does not work, and the link in the chat goes to HTTPS.
Oh my God.
I tried that because that has failed for me in Steven's link in the past multiple times. So, chat, when I saw the link, I was like, wait a minute, sometimes it's HTTP instead of HTTPS. So that's what it is.
All right, hold on. There. Click on that one. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to have my guy fix that right away.
So everyone throughout this whole video may have been clicking on the wrong one.
Well, it gets better because BackerKit link didn't work yesterday either.
That's true for a completely different reason.
That was BackerKit's fault. They fixed that. Well, that's the other thing. We're trying out BackerKit for the first time. The good news is I have someone there I can talk to whenever I want. Bad news is they're still figuring out the technology. MCDM managed to make 4.5 million on it. Hopefully we can make 1/1000th of that, and I'll be pretty happy. But the point
wait, are you saying that you would be pretty happy if we made like a few cents?
A few cents, that's right. I'll be very happy if I can make 10 cents. All right. I couldn't do the math in my head fast enough. I'm not Mark. Let's just say if I make something in the 5 figures, I'll be happy. How about that?
Okay, there you go. So, in that case,
I don't need to make
Steven,
7 figures on this.
In that case, Steven, you're looking for more like 1%.
Okay, 1%.
Maybe a little less if it can be low 5 figures.
Okay, I'll take 1.5%. Hey, we got Dungeon Masterpieces said he loves SSL errors. Yeah, me too. Don't we all love SSL errors? This is sort of my bane of my existence, by the way, because I don't put in the SSL, it gets auto added, so I have nothing to do with that. Do we have any more questions about
on the OGL history?
The OGL, wait, let me.
Yeah, Dungeon Masterpieces. That's Baron. You came up in our history when we talked about you being on all of those mainstream media interviews.
Oh, there we go. It does work. Yay, it does work. By the way, we're going to have a lot of stuff in there besides the hardcover. So we'll have things in there for if you're not even interested in the hardcover. So
we're going to figure some stuff out. Obviously, the centerpiece of the campaign is the hardcover because it's a campaign to make a full printing of the hardcover. That's what the campaign is about. But that doesn't mean that we won't find ways if you would like to support it because you, say, want more content in your not hardcover version of it or something like that, that we'll figure out ways that you can help.
Mm-hmm. So, some people are saying there's other things like the Elf license I know that he's working on. There's a couple of licenses. Hey, look, if there's a good license out there, I'd happily use it. But the other problem with a lot of these licenses then allow you to I think OGL allows you to use another license. So that's sort of the whole issue with using a different license is that if you switch from one license to another, then you can't use your own stuff. So he's sort of stuck with OGL 1.0.
So Poi Kilos gives a hypothetical that they're wondering that can allow me to also back you up on that, Stephen, and explain why it can't be done. Poi Kilos is wondering, why couldn't you just use the part of the SRD that got just put into the CCBY and then release your stuff under a different license that, along with putting the SRD stuff on the CCBY? So first of all, if you mix in the CCBY, some people are going to think they can use everything because that's what happens with Creative Commons licenses, even though there's different ones, even though that's not true. But let's assume that's not a problem for you. Here's the big problem. The only content that's OGL that's in CCBY is the 5e SRD. However, let's say you're us. We're a hypothetical example, right? We're here right now. So let's talk to us. We're publishers. We want a bunch of OGL content that's not in the 5e SRD. For example, let's say that, Paizo would want us to use the Orc license because that's their new license. But they've also published a category of creatures called Psychopumps. And there's like 10 Psychopumps in Pathfinder. But there's only like 2 that are in bestiaries right now, and there's probably only going to be around 2 that come out in the Orc compatible monster core. We don't know how many there's going to be until that comes out. Maybe there'll be 3, but not 10, and probably not the same ones we're writing into the Ancestry. And so if we want to use these Psychopumps with Paizo's Orc license, we actually can't because they've only been published by Paizo in the OGL. Paizo could do it. They could give people a bespoke second license to use it if they wanted to. Like, be like, yeah, we'd like you to be able to use Psychopump so you can, but there's no open license to allow it on Orc. You have to use OGL. You can't do it on CCBY. You can't do it on Orc. Because ironically, the WoTC stuff you could do on CCBY, and therefore you could probably find a way to CCBY plus Orc it if you only needed things from WoTC's 5e SRD. But if you need anything else, you can't. And that's the issue. with trying to do that. That's the ultimate issue. Even though everyone in chat who said mixing license can be a headache, people might not recognize which license is for which, and those are all also true. But the true deal breaker is that simply isn't enough if you're including anybody else's OGL content but the one that went into the CCBY.
So the final question I'll say, unless you have a few super chats in there.
No, I don't see any more.
The OGL scandals behind us and Hasbro is floundering, yet D&D is still massive. Where does the hobby go from here? Now, I did a video earlier today. I don't know if you saw it, Mark, but Hasbro was downgraded to hold, which is might as well be a death kill, because that's you don't get downgraded to a hold, and unless you're really in trouble. And on top of that, well, you get downgraded to a sell, you're really done. The big issue is that they were downgraded to $53 a share. Well, they're only at around $53 a share, so now they're down to like 47 or 49. And the big thing is they said that their dividend alone is $400 million, and they actually don't have the cash to pay their own dividend, and that never ends. So they only have a couple of options.
What do you do
here.
when you can't pay off your dividend?
Well, there's a few options. You either stop your dividend, which you can do, but that will just degrade your stock more. You can sell stock to earn money, but since the stock is so low, and they hate to do that, they hate selling stock, but that's actually what it's for. It's actually there so they can sell it, but they don't like doing that because then other people can buy it, and then they don't own as much as their own company, so they don't like to do that. Or they borrow, but they already have $3.5 billion in debt, and they need money to start paying down the debt, and they have to pay interest on that debt. So between the dividend and paying interest on $3.5 billion, they are in a lot of trouble. Like they are in, I don't even know what you do. What you start doing is either you get so cheap that someone will buy you up just for the licenses, because Magic is $1 billion license easily, because that's what it makes. It makes $1 billion a year now. Well, if the company is only worth, say $5 billion and $3.5 billion in debt, well, then it's really only worth $1.5 billion. And someone will look at that and say, man, the properties alone are worth more than the company is. And do you know who did that? There was this little company called Marvel, if you never heard of it. And someone, when they went bankrupt and their stock was at $4 a share, someone said, holy crap, they are worth billions, just the names, and saw the vision of what they can do with them. I think it was Ron Perlmutter, and he bought them and basically just said, yeah, and then sold them to Disney later. And he made billions off of that. So that's what happens, is someone comes along who has a lot of money, who buys it up because they're like, you know what? Transformers, Magic, D&D, everything else they own, Monopoly, that's worth money. And we could either break it up and sell it to individual people, which you can do. You could just start doing a bidding war and say, okay, we're going to break up these properties. Who wants Monopoly? Who wants Magic? And just like sell it all out. Or they merge with another company and stay intact. That's kind of what happened with WoTC. Or, and this one's pretty tricky, but it can be done, they break off WoTC into its own company, and then Hasbro just tanks, and then WoTC stays safe and becomes like a safe harbor.
I mean, that seems like a better...
Yeah, I'm just going through every option in my head.
It seems like an idea that could work, because that's the part of the company that's working. Obviously, it's very dangerous for the part of the company that is losing tons of money to lose the people that they're kind of latched onto and taking their money from.
It's all bad. The way out of it is, it's really simple. D&D has to be a smash hit. They need to stay in business just long enough for the VTT and the digital aspect to kick in, to start making consistently strong money. And I emphasize consistent, because I guarantee when those subscriptions were getting canceled, that was all hands on ship, and they were freaking out because they were assuming every quarter or every month, they're like, okay, we're making, I'm just making this up, $10 million from the D&D Beyond. And they just assume that for the whole year. Like 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 and a half, 10 and a half, 11, whatever it goes up. And they're like, we just assume that money's going to be there because those subscription rates never go up or down. They go up and down a little, or the point is they keep going up. But as soon as people started to cancel, from what I understand, approximately 50 to 60,000 people canceled the subscriptions. That's maybe about 10%, I heard, if not more. So suddenly they're like, oh, we were making 10 million. Oh, now it's like 9 or 8 million a month. And we are now in the hole for $20-30 million. And not only are we in the hole now, but it's going to take us 2 years to get back where we were just 2 weeks ago. I know I'm getting like really off the topic, but like a little esoteric, but that's the thinking of where they're at. So they really need this to make money to get them out of the hole. But you know what? They are so far in it, and they have so much debt, and they have a dividend. I wouldn't be shocked if they cut the dividend, because the dividend, which is, a lot of companies don't do that anymore. That's why you own it. But if they cut the dividend, it's only going to make the stock go down more. So what's going to happen is they're going to look at this and say, okay, is it better for us to sell stock and raise several millions of dollars, or is it better for us to cut the dividend knowing our stock will probably tank, but there's going to be a floor. Like it probably won't go past 35, 30. 30 is the lowest, but 35, really, it can't go lower than that. And when it even gets to those points, then the people start looking at hostile takeovers and start thinking of buying up the company just for the IPs because it's too cheap at that point. Anyhow, where does it go? I don't know, man. It's a weird place. I would have never thought a year ago that we'd be where we are now. Like, I was just excited to see a new version of D&D. I was just excited to see what they're coming out with and to play a new game and to try it out because, it's D&D.
I was interested in seeing where we were going to go with, doing our products in that system.
Yeah.
I never expected until the 21st when I was like, uh-oh, we may need to keep staying with 5e because look at what they said that they're going to be doing with this. And it was still like, it's fine. We'll stay with 5e and PF2. We're a lot of people are going to want to stay with 5e at this point. But then suddenly everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
And by the way, someone says $0 a share is the absolute floor. Yes, but not really, because what will happen is if they start becoming lower than their debt, they will get bought out. Someone will buy them. That's what happens. Because then they're actually worthless. So say if the company is only worth $3 billion and they have $3.5 billion in debt, the company is literally worth less than negative $500 million at that point. And that's what the company is worth. So someone will buy them because they're like, we're basically getting the IPs for free, or we just pay off that debt and now voila. Or you could just buy it and then just go bankrupt and never pay off the debt, and you get to keep the IPs. So there's a lot of tricks in this, but it's not looking good. I'll leave it at that. I just hope that I don't think D&D will ever go away, because they could sell it. They could sell Magic. They could sell D&D. I don't think they will. But it's going to be a weird couple of years. I'll leave it at that. I mean, do you have any ideas, Mark? I was talking a lot.
I'm saying I just think I do not understand the financials of what will get hurt and who will and how things will get destroyed if they torpedo the rest of Hasbro, the part that's really, really, really flaming down. But if their goal is to have a company that is doing in a healthy state, then it is true that jettisoning WoTC out in an escape pad by itself seems like it might be able to do that.
They could. They were
I'm sure
also,
that that would be very dangerous or that would be damaging because of everything else just basically being jettisoned at that point, right?
well, what ends up happening is like, was it Alta Fox was asking them to
Yeah.
do that 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and what will probably happen is you get the CEO. The problem is like I don't see how the CEOs get fired really. I mean, it's going to take someone to start buying up large chunks of stock and start to demand that they get some board seats and then they change upper management. And by the way, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. It's very important. People keep saying fire the upper management. You're going to save all this money. Not true. I'll tell you real quick why. If you fire the CEO and you fire the president of WoTC, great. You saved $10 million. Well, first of all, they get golden parachutes, so they're going to end up getting millions anyhow. And then you're going to hire someone. And those people are going to get the same amount of money, if not more. Okay, you're not going to find someone who's like, okay, we fired a CEO that was making $10 million a year. We'll get a CEO that makes $1 million a year. No, you got to find another CEO, and they're going to want $10 million a year. So you're going to end up getting someone more, if someone else who pays the same amount. And more importantly, when you fire them, they probably get millions of dollars in bonuses because that's how these things are set up. So that's not going to work. Now, the fact they're doing a poor job, maybe they get fired, but everything they're doing is setting them up as a digital company, and this takes time. And that's why I'm saying 2024 and 2025, that's it. Like, it was the beginning of this whole thing when January 2023 ended, and everyone thought it was over. I was like, no, it's just the beginning. And now we're starting to see the really interesting part. Is like, will D&D save Hasbro? Will the virtual tabletop and the electronic marketplace make them hundreds of millions of dollars in financial revenue that's consistent and dependable? And the answer is maybe, because everything's going digital. Remember, I was just saying half an hour ago, print is dying for real. I know people say that forever, but it actually is. Paper is way up. It costs a lot to print. It costs a lot to ship. It costs a lot to put things in bookstores. And not only that, every time you put something in a bookstore, you basically only get like 35% of the cover price. Or you can put it in a digital store and you get 97% of the cover price, and you can charge the same amount. So you figure out the math, which one's better. Anyhow. So if you guys like it, like and subscribe. As I said, do check out our products at battlezoo.com. If you want to play a dragon, which Mark wrote. If you like dragons, we're coming out with the Secret Dragons in a few months, where we will have more dragons that you can play, both as a PC and GM. All these new dragons. What did we release? What did we leak that we were doing first, Mark? I don't remember.
We didn't tell them which one they're doing first.
Oh, we didn't. Well, which one did we
just
leak?
told them that we told them some of the things that are going to be on there.
Oh, okay. We didn't do which one first.
And we showed a bunch of art that really give you a sense for what some of them will be. So we've admitted that the Leshy Dragon family is on there, but we've shown art that were from other dragon families well that would allow people to guess some of the other ones too.
Got it. Well, there's two dragons right here.
And the Leshy Dragon is not going to be the first things, but they are going to be in there. And yeah, some of the dragons are here.
I see the order, by the way. Yeah, there's some dragons down there.
We might be, but I'm telling you, the Leshy dragons are not going to be the first ones, regardless of what the new order is.
Yay! Well, they originally were first, and not doing them first. So, and then look, I got some new art. I got the what's that beholder with the beholder? Sorry, what's that evil eye with the electricity?
It's an evil eye.
What's it?
What? Yeah, it's not a beholder. It's an evil eye.
It's not a beholder. It's an evil eye.
Coming in February.
What's that one? The one with electricity coming out?
The one where with electricity coming out of it?
See, the whirlwind.
It's got electricity and it's got a whirlwind. Yeah, that's an evil eye. The evil eyes can do all sorts of fun things.
We got the
And
witch evil eye.
so
That's the Year of Legends, and that's
yeah,
out
that's
now.
from the Year of Legends. It's coming out in February.
Well, but this is out now, and in fact, look, I don't know if you saw in the
Evil
bottom
Eye's
left-hand
not
corner.
out. Evil Eye's
No,
not
no,
out
the
now.
Year of Legends is out now. You're
Yes.
tired. Look, we got.
No, you said that the Evil Eye was.
No, I meant the whole thing. Look in the bottom left-hand corner. You see who that is? That is a were creature. That's a werewolf bard.
Absolutely.
How silly is that?
I like werewolf bards.
You can play a werewolf bard, baby.
I asked you to get us that werewolf bard.
Look at him.
He's
so fancy.
Cool.
Look at that color.
Because werewolves can be fancy too. They're not just always out there tearing you into pieces.
That's right. And then even our evil eye, the little witch evil eye with the little wings. That's a very Final Fantasy type evil eye right there.
Yeah, that evil eye art. I don't know if I've seen the Evil Eye Air Kineticist.
No, that was the Air Kineticist. Yeah, you didn't see that one yet.
I didn't. I don't know. Even though I saw the Evil Eye document, but maybe
it
was
on
a page.
You should see the animated version. That one.
Maybe it was on a page I didn't have to copy fit. But yeah, I really want to see the animated version. That's awesome.
Got the whole whirlwind going and the electricity coming out of its eye. It's awesome. You get all that at battlezoo.com. Did I miss any questions? Nope. Well, now people are leaving. Well. Anyhow,
yeah, I think we covered it all. We've gone into the spinning down section.
2.5 hours in. It was, but hopefully this is kept for prosperity, kept forever,
and for posterity.
And
you also mentioned yesterday that we kept for prosperity. Yeah, well, it's for the prosperity of posterity.
Prosperity. Hey, man, look, it's 10:30. Say the thing.
No.
What is the thing? What do you want me to say?
Oh, they want us to say. Until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.
Well, I guess that's the thing. All right, everyone. We're going to go. See you. We'll be back next Wednesday. And we are going to have I believe, a new special guest who's never been on the show before.
Oh, I'm looking forward
Mark
to it.
doesn't even know who this person is.
I literally don't. Listen. That's you make it sound like it's a special new thing, but having a new guest is actually a special new thing. Me not knowing what it is because you don't tell me until like the day of or the day before, that's like most weeks.
That's pretty much most weeks. People are like, how do you guys figure out it's not Derek. It's how do you figure out who the guest is and what you're gonna talk about? And I say, usually an hour or two before the stream I figure it out. That's how we do it. I don't really plan that far in advance when it comes to the stream. It just shows you how seat of the pants we are. I'm the anti-script person. I'm as anti-script as it comes. And so is Mark.
I'm the one. I'm always planning. I'm making frameworks. I'm making schedules. And Steven will come up with some awesome thing that was not on that, and then I'll rework it and I'll make it work. And that's why we work well together.
Yeah, I'm always coming up with stuff, but seat of the pants technology. Mark and I were just talking about that yesterday. It's like working with me. It's like working in a hurricane, but some people can do it, and Mark can do it. We work really, 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 really fast, and you got to keep up, man. But it allows us to put out. I've already put out 5 books this year, man. It's the 4th. I've already put out 5 books. What have you been doing?
Wait, you put out 5?
Okay, we put out Angels. 2 Angels.
Angels.
Devils.
We put out 2 Devils. But the 2 Devils are to an interior group, so they're not all the way out.
That still counts. And Evil Eye.
Okay. Evil Eye, you did not put out to anybody yet. You did a lot of work on it, but it's not out yet. So I'm going to say 4. I'm going to say 4 books.
4.5, because Evil Eye's ready to go. I still had to finish it.
Well, now you're not going to be able to say you did that other half later on. But yes, that's fine.
4
you're ready for 4.
Bonus one.
Okay. I buy it. 4 and 1 bonus. And 1 pending. 1 pending.
1 pending. And the VTT. And the animated tokens. And set up the new backer kit. And it's only been 4 days into the new year.
Yep. And I've already got, I think, like 4 new things added to my list of things from that were generated by all of that and Steven's other ideas in these last 4 days too. So it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to show everybody the other things that we're going to be doing. Thanks for being with us and Happy New Year. Like, thanks for being here since last year on the 4th or before that. If you were one of our viewers who watched us before this whole thing blew up. And I hope that this next year is a little less hectic. But I'm worried that it won't be.
It won't be. I doubt it.
Okay.
Anyhow, say the thing again.
All right. Well, for real this time, until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat. Take care.
Bye, everyone.